Chapter 1241. Outside London, the excitement had come to an end. The battlefield where 3 flood-level Yuan Ku had died had been cleaned up, and then temporarily sealed off by the London Sword Committee, forbidding anyone from approaching that place. On the other hand, the madness on the internet had just begun. In order to prevent leaks and to prevent hurting the innocent, after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Long Shijendi had ordered all live broadcasts to be stopped, and other ordinary people on the city wall were prohibited from watching. Only the sword-bearers could watch from the sidelines. However, after the appearance of Guhan, Long Shijendi ordered the camera crew to start recording the battlefield. After all, this was the battle that Long Shijendi was going to prove himself. Nothing could prove Long Shijendi himself better than a live battle video. So when the battle was over, all the news media in London received a press release at the same time, and then cut off all the news that was being broadcast at the same time, and broadcast the latest news from this station and the exciting battle video. It was not until this time that the people of London knew that during the time when they were eating melon seeds just now, just outside London, 3 flood-level Yuan Ku had died there. After a short period of surprise and astonishment, the whole of London fell into a carnival. Except for those who were still playing games, almost all the Londoners rushed out of their homes, walked into the streets, and began to sing and dance to celebrate the glory of London. Just 10 minutes later, other Bay cities also received this shocking news. Although it was not like London, where there was an official order for all TV stations to broadcast the same news, most of the TV stations in other cities cut off all live TV broadcasts at the same time. Like the news media in London, they broadcast this exciting news to all humans. As a result, the whole human world was in great shock. In fact, a lot of shocking things had happened recently. It started with the invasion of Yuzhong City, which ended with the appearance of Jiyu Shenyuan, and Jiyu Shenyuan instantly became the most popular internet celebrity. However, not long after she became an internet celebrity, Jiyu Shenyuan became a murderer. She became a wanted criminal by the headquarters of the Sword Commission. Then it was Jiyu Shenyuan's sister, Jiyu Shahan, who came on the scene and shamelessly challenged Long Shijendi, which aroused the anger of the Londoners, and a 5-day counter-challenge began. As a result, the Londoners were slapped in the face. Jiyu Shahan defeated almost all the sword-bearers in London by herself, and even defeated an immortal sword-level sword-bearer as a spirit sword-level sword-bearer. This completely aroused everyone's curiosity. When the masses gathered in front of the TV, waiting for the unparalleled battle between the spirit sword-level sword-bearer and the emperor sword-level sword-bearer, Jiyu Shahan actually fell ill. The audience waited for an hour in front of the TV, but Jiyu Shahan did not appear. After that, the audience completely gave up on the live broadcast. After scolding Jiyu Shahan, they went to do their own things and no longer paid attention to the situation of the live broadcast. But they never thought that they would be given such a huge shock before entering the dark night. The 3 Hong-level Yuan Ku who came to watch the battle had all died in the hands of Long Shijendi. The masses watched the TV news in a somewhat dazed state. Anyway, all the TV stations were rolling the TV news. Even if they did not see it at the first time, they would not miss it at the second time. Only then did the masses confirm that the 3 Hong-level Yuan Ku who had committed heinous crimes were really dead. While shouting "Long live Long Shijendi" and His Majesty Long Shi was invincible, the audience also found something unusual in this news. In addition to exaggerating the power and strength of Long Shijendi, the host also mentioned a name that had disappeared from the audience's ears for a long time: Guhan. The frequency of this name appearing in the news was second only to Long Shijendi, even higher than the frequency of the pirate sword fairy. It was not until this time that the audience realized that this earth-shattering battle was not completed by Long Shijendi alone. There were also Guhan and the pirate sword fairy as helpers. This made it a little difficult for the audience to understand. The pirate sword fairy was an immortal sword-level sword-bearer in London, so it was natural that he would help His Majesty Jendi. But why did this Guhan appear on the battlefield? Wasn't he a famous sword-level sword-bearer? Wasn't he the previous master of the sword garret in Yuzhong City? Oh, yes, he also severely humiliated Long Shijendi's son, the sword spirit of the Ming Palace, and could be said to be Long Shijendi's enemy. Until now, he was still a wanted criminal on the Sword Committee's list. How could such a person suddenly stand with Long Shijendi and fight with Long Shijendi against the flood-level Yuan Ku? With his small stature as a famous sword-level swordbearer, perhaps he could not even resist a blow from the flood-level Yuan Ku. This made the audience somewhat confused. However, the battle footage shown on the TV had been edited. There was only one protagonist in these scenes, that was the stalwart Long Shijendi and his sword lady. As for Guhan and the pirate sword fairy, they could only occasionally appear in some corners of the screen, so the audience could not figure out what role Guhan played in the battle. As a result, there were more and more posts on the internet asking for the original unedited battle footage. Some local tycoons even offered a reward of hundreds of thousands of yuan to buy the original battle footage. However, the entire battle footage was tightly controlled by the London officials. No matter how much the local tycoons offered, there was no response. Just when the vast number of onlookers felt that it was very likely that they would never be able to see the unedited battle footage for the rest of their lives, a long-lost forum ID suddenly appeared on the forum of Sword Maiden Online. Along with this ID were 8 videos that were more than 600 gigabytes long. Unlike the style of this ID, which was desperate for money, this post was actually free, and any audience could directly read it. The moment the audience saw this ID, many players of Sword Maiden Online were excited, because this ID had once swept the entire Sword Maiden Online, and until now, no one had reached his level, military governor. But what made the players curious was why this military governor had released such a large battle footage. Could it be that the military governor had conquered some dungeon and released a dungeon tutorial? It was just that they heard the system broadcast saying that a dungeon record had been broken by the military governor. When the players who first discovered the post opened the video of the battle attached to the post, they sucked in a breath of cold air. What the Admiral had posted was actually the unedited battle footage of the Battle of London, which was the hottest topic on the internet. Countless tycoons were willing to spend a lot of money to purchase it, but they were unable to purchase the unedited battle footage of the Battle of London. What's more, the footage was taken from 8 different cameras. The original footage was unedited, and all the footage broadcasted by the television stations was edited from these 8 battle footage. Oh my god, the military governor is really amazing. It would have been fine if he didn't appear, but when he did, he created such a big news. The players let out a gasp of admiration. Most of the players immediately began to study the original battle footage, while others began to call their friends and post this exciting news on their respective social media platforms. Immediately, a large number of views began to flood into the forum of Sword Maiden Online and the post by the military governor. Even ordinary people who did not usually like to play games, or even hated games, and had never logged into a game forum before, registered an account just to be able to watch the video posted in the post. In less than half an hour, the post went from 0 to 3 million views. 3 hours later, it reached 10 million views. Within a day, it broke through 30 million views. A week later, it broke through 60 million views. It became the 6th post to break through 50 million views since the opening of Sword Maiden Online. It was also the fastest post to break through 50 million views. Until a long time later, there were still many players who clicked on this post with a sense of pilgrimage to admire the glory of Guhan countless times. No one knew how many views this post would reach in the end. Anyway, even after 100 years, the lowest number of views of this post would still exceed 1,000 on a single day. After a rough look at the battle footage, there is something that must be said. 10 minutes after the post was posted, a player posted such a post. There was only one sentence in this post. His Majesty Dragon Shur is indeed a hero, but Guhan is even more of a hero. This was also the thought of many players who had watched the video. The players were surprised to find that the truth was not as the TV video had claimed. Dragon Shijendi was the absolute protagonist, while Guhan and the Pirate Sword Fairy were only supporting characters who fought with Dragon Shijendi. In fact, the only real supporting character was the Pirate Sword Fairy. Guhan was undoubtedly the second protagonist of the whole video. In some ways, it was not an exaggeration to say that Guhan was the first protagonist. The players naturally had their own reasons. It was true that the 3 flood-level Yuan-Ku had died under the sword of Dragon Shijendi. But if Guhan and the pirate sword fairy had not restrained the other 2 flood-level Yuan-Ku, Dragon Shijendi would not have been able to kill Tesla so easily. Especially after the 2 flood-level Yuan-Ku had completely unleashed their power of the rule. At that time, the pirate sword fairy could not stop the flood-level Yuan-Ku who had unleashed their power of the rule, and was beaten to the point of vomiting blood in just 2 or 3 moves. It was Guhan who had single-handedly blocked the 2 flood-level Yuan-Ku who had unleashed their power of the rule, separating them from Tesla and being unable to help Tesla, who was in a desperate situation, which ultimately led to the defeat of the whole battle. There was no doubt that if it had not been for Guhan, Dragon Shijendi would not have been able to defeat and kill the 3 flood-level Yuan-Ku. It could be said that Guhan had made great contributions. Chapter 1242. As the saying goes, amateurs enjoy the show, while experts appreciate the artistry. Most of the audience's first reaction when they saw this video was that Guhan was so strong that he could actually block 2 hung-level Yuan-Ku alone. But in the eyes of the elite swordsman players and the swordsmen in real life, it was even more difficult for them to accept that Guhan could actually release 2 sword ladies at the same time. What was even more ridiculous was that these 2 sword ladies were both spirit sword level sword ladies, and they were even more powerful than immortal sword level sword ladies. To put it bluntly, when those who knew swordsmen saw Guhan release 2 sword ladies at the same time, everyone instantly knelt down. This was not a joke, nor was there any exaggeration. These people really knelt down. In their minds, there was no such thing as a swordsman being able to release 2 sword ladies at the same time. They just felt that their minds were in a mess as if they were about to explode, and all their common sense was blown away. To give a simple example, if one day we saw aliens coming, we might be very surprised, but we would never be so surprised that our worldview would explode. This was because humans had been watching all kinds of sci-fi movies and novels since childhood, and there were also all kinds of speculations about aliens on the internet. There were even some vivid and seemingly real alien stories. Therefore, humans had long accepted the existence of aliens in their minds, so if one day aliens suddenly came to Earth, humans would not be too surprised. But if one day you suddenly found out that the husky in your house could talk and was using your mobile phone to fish for POI, you would definitely claw your hair into a hornet's nest and run out of the house like a madman, screaming that the husky had become a spirit or something like that. Since all the sword bearers were stunned for an average of 36 seconds after watching the video, unable to say a word, humans later called this dramatic event the 36 seconds of silence of the world. Later, there was a director who made this story into a movie, which achieved quite a good box office record. Compared to the storm among ordinary people, an even bigger storm was brewing among the swordsman group. Countless swordsmen had watched the video and repeatedly confirmed the authenticity of the video. The swordsman named Guhan did indeed have 2 sword ladies at the spirit sword level, and after they were released at the same time, all the swordsmen began to spread the news. They dialed every number in their communicators and told their brothers and friends with great excitement and enthusiasm that there was actually a swordsman in this world who had 2 sword ladies at the spirit sword level and could release them at the same time. In just 10 minutes, except for those swordsmen in areas where the quantum communication network could not reach, all the swordsmen fell into this news. Many swordsmen learned of this news when they were fighting with Yuan-Ku. As a result, they began to stare blankly and were severely beaten by Yuan-Ku. According to later statistics, there were even 3 swordsmen who died because of this, which made people speechless. Countless swordsmen called the Sword Committee Association, asking them to come forward and explain what had happened, why a swordsman could have 2 sword ladies of the same level, and they strongly demanded that the Sword Committee Association announce how to have 2 sword ladies of the same level. Good things could not be enjoyed alone. They must be shared with all the swordsmen. As a result, the Sword Committee Association also said that they were very confused and had no idea what had happened. After the higher-ups of the Sword Committee Association watched the video, they fell into a deep silence. After the silence, they immediately ordered their men to contact Guhan and ask Guhan to explain the matter in detail. But their men helplessly reported that Guhan's personal terminal had been destroyed. At this time, he was in a state where he did not have a personal terminal, so they could not contact him through conventional means. In desperation, the big shots of the Sword Committee Association could only call the London City Sword Committee and ask the London City Sword Committee to investigate Guhan face to face. The London City Sword Committee answered very quickly. They said that Guhan was now attending a banquet held by Longsha Jendi, and Longsha Jendi had personally issued an order that if Guhan did not want to meet, then no one was allowed to disturb Guhan. Otherwise, it would be against Longsha Jendi. Well, since Longsha Jendi had spoken, the big shots of the Sword Committee Association had nothing to say. No matter how powerful they were not as powerful as Longsha Jendi. And the only one who could directly talk to Longsha Jendi, Haochen Jendi, had fallen into a state of serious illness. In order to save his life, Haochen Jendi had entered a state of closed-door training. Unless Yangjing City was in danger of destruction, Haochen Jendi would never come out of closed-door training. As a result, the Sword Committee Association fell into a situation of being bullied on both sides. On one hand, there was a steady stream of questioning letters from the swordbearers, asking the Sword Committee Association to come forward and explain. On the other hand, the City of London ignored them, making the Sword Committee Association extremely passive. However, the Sword Committee Association did not know that Longsha Jendi was also very curious and was asking Guhan about the two spirit sword girls. After achieving this monstrous achievement, Longsha Jendi, who was in a good mood, held a banquet in the palace that night, inviting all the swordbearers above the spirit sword level in London, as well as some famous swordbearers of other levels, as well as some social celebrities. Everyone knew that this was Longsha Jendi's celebration banquet, and they also knew that after today, Longsha Jendi would completely replace Haochen Jendi and become the #1 Jendi in the human world, becoming the uncrowned king of the whole human world, and their City of London would also rise. At least, the land price of the City of London would double. At the beginning of the banquet, Longsha Jendi became the center of all the people. Everyone held up the wine glass in their hands and said congratulatory nonsense to Longsha Jendi, trying to have a drink with Longsha Jendi. Only Guhan and Lu Shihua, these two guys, shrank in the corner of the banquet, each slowly drinking the red wine in their glass, completely ignoring the chores outside. The Londoners originally did not like Guhan. Although Guhan's contribution to this big victory was indispensable, the Londoners still habitually threw away the role of Guhan and brought all the glory to Longsha Jendi. However, halfway through the banquet, Longsha Jendi, who was receiving the congratulations of the crowd, heard a prompt sound from his personal terminal, and a message entered Longsha Jendi's mind. Longsha Jendi's face immediately changed, and then he pushed aside the crowd and walked to Guhan with a smile. He took the initiative to stretch out his glass and said with a smile, "What's wrong, brother Guhan? Won't you accompany me for a drink? Your Majesty is very busy, how can I disturb your Majesty?" Guhan said with a smile, but he had no intention of raising the glass in front of him, which made the other guests around extremely dissatisfied. Some of the grumpy guests were ready to teach Guhan a lesson. "What are you doing? Withdraw." Longsha Jendi glared at the guests behind him with dissatisfaction. "Your Majesty, this guy is too disrespectful to you. You personally proposed a toast to him, but he didn't even raise his glass. It's too much. I suggest that we throw him out, so that he won't be an eyesore here," a guest said very rudely. When Longsha Jendi heard this, he coldly snorted and said, "Fine, I'll stand here and not do anything. If any of you have the ability to throw him out, do it now, and I promise to give you a promotion." As soon as Longsha Jendi's voice fell, all the guests present suddenly went silent out of fear. What a joke! This was a freak who could resist 2 Hong level Yuan Ku. If Longsha Jendi did not make a move, even if they had great ability, there was no way they could throw Guhan out. Let me tell you, don't look at this world with your previous brains. How many years can I live? At most, it's only 20 or 30 years. Longsha Jendi looked around at all the people around him and said, "After 20 or 30 years, whose world will it be? Will it still be my world? Let me tell you, after 20 or 30 years, it will be the world of Brother Guhan. I can tell you that the word I is no longer Brother Guhan's way of addressing himself. Brother Guhan can already use the word I in advance. In the future, it will definitely be Brother Guhan's world. Guhan will certainly ascend the throne and become an emperor. And once Brother Guhan ascends the throne and becomes an emperor, he will certainly be able to cover the sky, and even I will be ashamed of my inferiority. Long Jendi scolded in a stern voice, "You idiots, the future Jendi is here, but you still don't know how to establish a good relationship with him, and you still want to throw him out. Are you all idiots?" Long Jendi reprimanded the guests until they were speechless, but in his heart, he was still somewhat unconvinced. However, these guests thought that what Long Jendi said was right. This Guhan's spirit sword level was already this high. If he were to ascend the throne and become an emperor, it would really turn the sky upside down. Thinking of this, the guest who had just reprimanded Guhan was suddenly scared to the point of sweating profusely. He quickly picked up his wine glass, walked over to Guhan's side, and said with an awkward smile on his face, "Lord Guhan, I hope that you, a person of great stature, will not remember the offense of this lowly person and let this lowly person off. You can leave. You're not the person who killed my father. Why would I want to take revenge on you?" Guhan waved his hand. The guest felt as if he had been pardoned. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and ran away. "You don't need to gather around here. Let me and Brother Guhan have a few words alone." Long Jendi opened his mouth. Even if the others didn't want to leave, they could only dejectedly leave. "What? You really don't want to drink a cup of wine from me to you?" Long Jendi once again raised his wine glass in front of Guhan. "How would I dare?" Guhan was not an untactful person, so he also raised the wine glass in his hand, slightly touched it with Long Jendi's, and then drained it in one gulp. "The person who announced it in the forum was you. That military governor was you." When Guhan had drained his wine, Long Jendi suddenly launched a sneak attack and asked in an inscrutable tone, "It's me." Guhan's answer was very straightforward. There was nothing to hide. Chapter 1243. Why did you do such a thing? Long Jendi's eyes suddenly became sharp. "Don't you know that you are tearing down my stage? Why can't I do that?" Guhan smiled. "Your Majesty, do I need to say more about who was the one who started this? Humph, the 3 Yuan coups were all killed by me, so the protagonist should naturally be me. Isn't this a fact?" Long Jendi continued to press. "Of course, Your Majesty is the well-deserved protagonist, and this is also a well-deserved fact. But aren't those videos that have been sent out the truth? Compared with Your Majesty's edited videos, my unedited videos are the most authentic fact." Guhan's tone was neither arrogant nor humble, without the slightest fear of Long Jendi. "You brat." Long Jendi stared at Guhan for a long time, 1,000 emotions flashing through his eyes, and finally turned into a burst of laughter. "You brat, you have pushed me into an alley. In the end, it seems that I have wronged you. Ashamed. Ashamed." Guhan cupped his fists towards Long Jendi. "I have no other choice. If I don't reveal my credit, I'm afraid that even if Long Jendi speaks for me to the Sword Committee, those guys from the Sword Committee will not let me off so easily. I have no choice but to reveal my contribution so that the Sword Committee won't talk too much nonsense. So that's how it is. It seems that I have wronged Brother Guhan." Long Jendi nodded again and again as he listened to Guhan's explanation. "By the way, I'm curious about something else. I've already collected all the recordings. Even the Sword Immortal Pirate wouldn't be able to get his hands on them. Brother Guhan, you're a stranger in London, so how did you get your hands on them?" A trace of haze flashed across Long Jendi's face. "In the end, who is secretly helping Brother Guhan?" "Guhan, you tell me, I will definitely thank him." "Your Majesty, do you think I will answer your question?" Guhan smiled. "You'd better answer me, otherwise, all those who may have access to these videos will have to go home and take care of their children." Long Jendi's words were a very obvious threat. "I didn't want to say it, but I don't want to implicate the innocent, so I will speak frankly." Guhan sighed and said faintly, "In fact, no one disobeyed Your Majesty's orders and gave me, an outsider who had just arrived in London, the green light. The one who really helped me was not anyone, but Her Excellency Tomono Kakaze." Tomono Kakaze? Bat's highest level of intelligence. Hearing Guhan's answer, Long Jendi was surprised. He never thought that Guhan actually got the videos from Tomono Kakaze. Impossible, I have encrypted these videos to SS level. How could Tomono Kakaze give them to you? Don't try to deceive me, Long Shijendi said angrily. It's all thanks to my disciple. Guhan touched Lu Shihua's little head and said lightly, my disciple is also the head of the Sword Garret in Yuzhang City. During the battle, before Your Majesty encrypted these videos, she had asked Tomono Kakaze to record and copy them. By the time Your Majesty encrypted these videos, the backup of the videos had already been in the hands of my disciple. If Your Majesty doesn't believe it, you can check it. Her Excellency Tomono Kakaze still has a record. So that's how it is. It's really a good plan. You actually calculated this before the battle began. After listening to Guhan's explanation, Long Shijendi sucked in a breath of cold air. In his heart, his vigilance towards Guhan increased by N levels. This guy was really terrifying. He had actually calculated everything that would happen later from the very beginning. Even the fact that he might use the videos to cover up the truth had been calculated. What was this guy's head made of? How could it be so terrifying? At the same time, Long Shijendi had a faint idea. An idea that he would never want to go against Guhan again in this life. Otherwise, God knows where Guhan would secretly plot against him. After all, the current Guhan was no longer the little famous swordbearer of 3 years ago. Now, Guhan was already a big shot that he couldn't look down on. Oh, there's no other way. After all, there are precedents. Guhan sighed and said somewhat helplessly, oh, precedents? What precedents? Where are the precedents? Long Shijendi's curiosity was immediately aroused by Guhan's words. It's the current popular ancestor, Emperor Qin. Guhan smiled, Your Majesty Longsha, you really don't know what happened in Shanhai Pass that year. Of course, I don't know anything. Long Shijendi's expression was serious, but I know that Ying Zheng is by no means a good guy. I am standing on Brother Guhan's side. Thank you very much, Your Majesty. Guhan raised his glass to Long Shijendi. Long Shijendi gave a hearty smile, and the two drank their wine at the same time. There is one more thing. I hope Brother Guhan can answer me truthfully. Long Shijendi glanced at Guhan's waist, which had nothing on it, and suddenly changed the subject. Brother Guhan, where is your sword maiden? Oh. They said that they don't like this kind of hypocritical occasion, so they collectively ran to the street to go shopping. I didn't bring a sword maiden with me, Guhan explained with a smile. Then I asked Brother Guhan, what level of sword bearer are you? Long Shijendi's eyes suddenly became sharp. Your Majesty has a discerning eye. Can't you see that I am a spirit sword level sword bearer? Guhan said with a smile. I'm sorry, I really can't see that. Long Shijendi's voice fell, and the personal terminal in his hand projected a photo. This is concubine Qingpin, Brother Guhan's ancient sword maiden. Moreover, she is an original sword maiden that has been discovered for the first time. Is this correct? Long Shijendi pointed to the photo of Qingpin and asked. In this photo, Qingpin was wearing a crocodile costume, holding a popsicle and eating hard, and around Qingpin were some simple and plain-dressed bosses with helpless eyes. This was taken during the 8 Academies assembly, right? When Guhan saw this photo, he couldn't help but think back to 3 years ago, and a smile appeared on his face. Yes, she is my ancient sword maiden, Qingpin. I don't need to say much about her. I'm afraid that people all over the world have seen this concubine's photo in primary school textbooks. Concubine Yi Tian, who used to belong to Zhe Tian Jendi, is also the #1 sword maiden in the treasure sword level. Now, she is Brother Guhan's sword maiden. I remember that when I learned that Brother Guhan had synchronized Heavenly Sword, I was so surprised that I jumped out of bed. The photo of Heavenly Sword that Long Shijendi took out made Guhan a little embarrassed, because it was a photo of Heavenly Sword drunk at the entrance of a bar, drooling and sleeping soundly. Someone must have taken a photo of Yi Tian while she was drinking in Yuzhang City. I've embarrassed myself in front of Your Majesty. Heavenly Sword is indeed my sword maiden. This is also something that everyone in the world knows. Guhan nodded and admitted it. I don't know much about this sword maiden. She is also a native sword maiden that has appeared in the world for the first time. Moreover, Brother Guhan, You haven't reported to the Sword Committee, and you haven't appeared in front of the world many times. Therefore, I only know that she is called Juzi Sword. Based on the strength that she has displayed so far, she is at least one of the top 10 sword maidens. Long Jendi finally took out a photo of Juzi. However, this photo showed that Juzi was very small, and it had been taken at a distance of at least 500 meters. After all, Juzi had appeared in front of the world very few times. Even Long Jendi found it difficult to get a complete and clear photo. Yes, Juzi is my sword maiden. Long Jendi, you are really resourceful. I have only mentioned the name Juzi to a few close friends, but your majesty actually knows about it. Guhan's words were equivalent to fart. Long Jendi was an emperor sword wielder. Unless Guhan had never mentioned Juzi's name to anyone, it would be a piece of cake for Long Jendi to find out. Well, brother Guhan, it's good that you are willing to admit it. Long Jendi finally projected all 3 photos, and then pointed to the photos of Qing Pin, Yi Tian, and Juzi, and read them one by one. Ancient sword grade, treasure sword grade, famous sword grade, brother Guhan's sword maidens are all here. So, the question is, how should we explain these 2 sword maidens? The photos of Qing Pin and the other 2 were thrown out by Long Jendi, and 2 sword maidens, who looked like twins, were projected in front of Guhan. They were impressively the Execute Immortal Sword and the Extinguish Immortal Sword. I am very curious, why does brother Guhan have 2 sword maidens? Brother Guhan, are you now an immortal sword grade sword wielder, or? Long Jendi did not finish his words, and just stared at Guhan very seriously. Of course, he could sense that the Execute Immortal Sword and the Extinguish Immortal Sword were only sword maidens of spirit sword grade, so he wanted Guhan to personally tell the truth. Your Majesty has already guessed it, so why bother asking me? Guhan smiled indifferently, and then stretched out his hands toward the window. A few seconds later, 2 crisp sounds of glass bursting could be heard. The glass windows of the banquet windows were broken into pieces, and the surrounding guests screamed in fright. Looking back, the Execute Immortal Sword and the Extinguish Immortal Sword were held in Guhan's hands at the same time, and then Guhan let them quietly float between himself and Long Jendi, and then said, "As your Majesty can see, these 2 sword maidens are spirit sword grade sword maidens, and are also my sword maidens. So you admit it. You have 2 sword maidens of spirit sword grade at the same time." The Dragon Lion Sword Emperor stood up abruptly, and the chair behind him was sent flying by the intense airflow. The guests who were startled by the broken windows were once again startled. Yes, I have 2 sword maidens of spirit sword grade. As soon as Guhan's voice fell, the Execute Immortal Sword and the Extinguish Immortal Sword suspended in the air were released at the same time, and then coincidentally nestled in Guhan's bosom. Guhan swore to God that this last part was not arranged by Guhan. Chapter 1244. Guhan's voice was so loud that everyone in the banquet hall could hear it clearly. Therefore, all the guests turned to look at Guhan and Long Jendi, the 2 spiritual sword-level sword maidens in Guhan's arms. In fact, these guests had already heard the news online and knew that Guhan might have 2 spiritual sword-level sword maidens. However, most of them would rather believe that their eyes were playing tricks on them, or that there was something wrong with the recording, or that someone else had released the sword maidens at the same time. In short, these people were unwilling to believe that Guhan had 2 spiritual sword-level sword maidens. Until this moment, when Guhan personally hugged the 2 spiritual sword-level sword maidens in his arms, these guests had no choice but to accept the fact that their worldview was blown away. How is it? I'm giving you face, right? At the same time, in Guhan's purple palace, Juzian's playful voice rang out, hugging 2 spiritual sword-level sword maidens at the same time in front of so many people, in front of an emperor sword-level sword wielder. Isn't that very cool? Isn't that very honorable? What else could Ji Han say? He could only agree. Let me tell you, my sister didn't want to cooperate with you even if you beat her to death, but thanks to my persuasion, she finally cooperated with me. Ji Han, don't you think you should give us sisters some sort of reward? Zhu Xian continued to say. Ji Han was puzzled. With Zhu Xian's temperament, how could it do something like throwing itself into someone else's arms? So it was the doing of Extinguish Celestial Sword. But Extinguish Celestial Sword had spent so much effort to convince her sister. What did she want? What reward do you want? Although the actions of the Immortal Exterminating Sword and the Immortal Extinguishing Sword were not part of his plan, it was undoubtedly much better than his original plan. It was also much more shocking. Therefore, it seemed natural for him to ask for some rewards. After all, he had to encourage subjective initiative. Well, you're not allowed to touch that little bitch for at least 3 months. What do you think? Juetian said bluntly. Hey! Who are you calling a bitch? You 4 sisters are all bitches. Before Guhan could say anything, Shenyuan took the initiative to refute. Humph. In the illusion, who was the one who took the initiative to push Guhan down? Let me tell you, I still have the HD recording of that time. If you don't admit it, then I'll play the recording in this Zifu. Or I'll simply use an illusion to project it into this hall. I'll let everyone see how a little bitch like you seduce men, Zhu Xian said in an incomparably domineering manner. F***ck. This guy actually recorded it. A few black lines appeared on Guhan's forehead. It was true that the female lead in this video was Shenyuan, but the male lead was him. If this video was played in the form of an illusion, then he wouldn't be famous for his strength, but for the passionate news of love affairs. Even with his cold and indifferent personality, he couldn't accept this kind of thing. All right, just play it. I was just worried that no one would appreciate my beautiful body. If you play it, then let others see my beauty. I have nothing to be afraid of. What Guhan did not expect was that the Shenyuan sword was not to be outdone. It actually fought back. The two of them were arguing more and more fiercely, and the celestial extinguishing sword could cast an illusion at any time. Both of you shut up. Guhan shouted from within his Zifu, directly suppressing the voices of the celestial extinguishing sword and the Shenyuan sword. Lady Juzian, I agree to your request. I promise not to touch the Shenyuan sword's body for 3 months. After reprimanding the 2 sword maidens, Guhan rushed to say this. It could be said that he first calmed Juetian down. After all, the recording was in Juetian's hands. All right. When Juzian heard this, his eyes immediately narrowed into slits as he happily replied. Surnamed Jiu, what do you mean by this? Are you planning to abandon me after using me? Are you going to turn your back on me after eating my body? Hearing Guhan's decision, the Shenyuan sword was indignant on the spot, and angrily questioned him. Please use your brain and think about it. Right now, I am only a spirit sword wielder, not even an immortal sword wielder. There is no way I can synchronize with you for 3 months. Since you can't synchronize with me, you can't appear as a sword maiden. Even if I want to touch your body, I can't. Why are you so angry? Guhan said helplessly. Ah. The Shenyuan sword paused for a moment. In other words, Juetian's request is for nothing? Even if you don't agree to it, you can't have sex with me. That's right. That's it. Guhan said. Haha. Juetian, you idiot, you actually made such a meaningless request. Wahahaha, I'm dying of laughter. I'm dying of laughter. Shenyuan sword laughed heartily. This time, it was Juetian's turn to be livid. Enough, you two have taken advantage of me. Shut your mouths. Let me deal with Master Dragon and Jendi first. Under Guhan's suppression, Shenyuan sword and Juetian finally obediently shut their mouths. However, in the dark, Juetian and Juzian both made their moves at the same time. Each pinched a soft piece of flesh on the back of Guhan's waist. The pain of giving birth instantly swept through Guhan's body. And what made Guhan's balls ache was that at this moment, Guhan had to maintain a smile. Brother Guhan, you don't look well. Did you wear out your body during the battle and need to rest? The dispute between the Extinguish Immortal Sword and the Shenyuan Sword seemed to be quite long, but in the Zifu, it was actually only a matter of a few seconds. However, Guhan's face had changed several times overnight, which made Longsha Jendi feel very strange. It's nothing, just a little tired. I'll be fine after a day of rest. Guhan conveniently separated the Extinguish Immortal Sword and Juzian from his arms, and let them sit on the sofa with a sneer on their faces. Only then did he respond to Long Shijendi. It's good that you're fine. Long Shijendi nodded. Brother Guhan, I'm afraid you don't know, but during this period of time, whether it's the public communication of our London City Sword Committee or the exclusive work communication, all of them were in a state of outage. At least 100,000 calls were made to the public communication number in the 8 major base cities, and there were also thousands of calls from the Sword Committee. Their questions can be summed up as two. One is whether Brother Guhan has 2 spirit sword maidens or not. This question has just been answered by Brother Guhan, so I can reply to them. It's just that this second question, I would like to ask Brother Guhan to answer it. Long Shijendi finally asked the question that he urgently wanted to know. Your Majesty, please speak frankly. As long as I can answer Your Majesty's question, I will definitely tell you everything I know. Guhan bowed and said with an expression of I will definitely cooperate with you. Then I would like to ask Brother Guhan, what method did you use in the end? Or did you have some kind of fortuitous encounter that allowed you to have 2 spirit sword maidens at the same time? Long Shijendi waved his hand and a sword chi barrier appeared behind Long Shijendi, completely sealing off the space where he and Guhan were, and also completely blocking all the sounds coming from this small space. The guests outside could only curiously look at Long Shijendi and Guhan, but they couldn't hear what the two of them were talking about. This. Guhan hesitated for a moment. This is my secret, can I not answer it? Brother Guhan, what do you think? Long Shijendi sneered. Brother Guhan, your intelligence is rare in the world. I'm afraid there are only a few sword bearers in the world who can compare with your wisdom. Brother Guhan, in your heart, you should be very clear about the answer to this question. When Brother Guhan shows the 2 spirit sword maidens to the world, Brother Guhan, you absolutely can't hide it anymore. Even if I don't ask you, the other sword bearers will ask you, and the sword committee will not let you go. Sooner or later, you have to say it. Really? Guhan also sneered. What if I don't say it? Will they issue me a joint arrest warrant of the 8 base cities? I don't think it's necessary. After all, the joint arrest warrant on me hasn't been cancelled yet. When I was still a famous sword bearer, I was never afraid of this so-called arrest warrant, let alone now. If the elders of the Sword Committee are interested in continuing to play this game of cat and mouse, that's also very good. At worst, I'll be a mouse again and disappear in front of you for a few years. But after a few years, who the mouse is, who the cat is, that's hard to say. Brother Guhan, you have to be able to escape from here. Long Shijendi coldly looked at the sword maiden in his hand. Brother Guhan's ability is so high that it's rare in the world. Even I am not sure that I can catch Brother Guhan. However, Brother Guhan is a bit too complacent, so much so that you may have forgotten that the reason why you were able to block the 2 flood-level Yuan Ku today is because they were blocked by my dimensional wall and the Void Great Array at the same time. They couldn't enter the Void at all, which was why you were able to block them. As for now, as long as I open the Void Gate and lock Brother Guhan in, I'm afraid that no matter how high your ability is, Brother Guhan, you can only say sorry. A sharp light flashed through Long Shijendi's eyes, a light that could pierce the void. Is this how Your Majesty Long Shi treats me, a meritorious minister? Guhan smiled. Aye. Long Shijendi suddenly burst into laughter. Brother Guhan, you misunderstand. I am already an Emperor Sword level swordsman. Even if I know the way you have 2 Spirit Sword level sword maidens, it is of no use to me. It is impossible for me to have a second Spirit Sword level sword maidens. Why should I be a bad person and form an irreconcilable enmity with Brother Guhan and ruin the future strongest of our human race? I am not the kind of person who doesn't know what's good for me. I will not do such a thing that makes my friends hate me and my enemies happy. Long Shijendi waved his hand, and the surrounding sword chi barrier disappeared. I just want to remind Brother Guhan that not everyone in the human race is as righteous as I am. Especially that Emperor Qin you just mentioned. He can do anything. Your Majesty doesn't have to worry about this. Sooner or later, I will settle accounts with Ying Zheng. As for other people besides Ying Zheng, if they dare to go against the righteousness of mankind, I don't mind getting rid of these black sheep for mankind. Guhan said coldly. Ari. Killing each other is the worst. I hope this day will never come. Long Jendi finished speaking and raised the wine glass in his hand for the third time, and then facing all the guests around him, he loudly sang. Come. All of us raise our wine glasses and toast our brother Guhan. Long Jendi opened his mouth. Although the other guests present were puzzled and didn't know what Long Jendi was playing at, but no one dared to go against Long Jendi's words. One after another, they raised the wine glasses in their hands. Just as all the guests were preparing to drink the wine in their glasses, a sudden unforeseen event once again interrupted the actions of everyone, including Long Jendi. Your Majesty the Sea Emperor, Little Long East Sea Dragon King Ao Guang. Little Long West Sea Dragon King Ao Run. Little Long North Sea Dragon King Ao Chin. Little Long South Sea Dragon King Ao Shun. Respectfully inviting Your Majesty the Sea Emperor to visit the Sea Imperial Palace and hold the Sea Emperor's Ascension ceremony 3 days later. At the same time, announce to the world that the 4 seas will celebrate together. The whole world shines with splendor. Boundless longevity. Chapter 1245. The Internet had never been a quiet place. Once there was wind, only God knew how high the waves could reach, especially when 2 blockbusters exploded on the Internet at the same time. While people were still immersed in the death of the 3 flood-level Yuan coup and the biggest victory of mankind in decades, and shocked by Guhan's strength and the fact that Guhan had 2 spirit sword-level sword ladies, an even heavier bomb exploded. The first to trigger this bomb came from the official platform of Yuzhang City, or to be precise, the Yuzhang City Sword Garrett public account that belonged to the official platform of Yuzhang City. Although it was the official platform of Yuzhang City, very few people paid attention to the Sword Garrett public account. Not to mention the residents of other cities, even the citizens of Yuzhang City had no interest in this public account, because this public account had not published any new articles for 3 years. The total number of fans of this public account had also decreased by more than 800,000 in the past 3 years. However, the total number of fans of this Sword Garrett public account was still 1.7 billion. After all, this was a public account that had been operating for more than 600 years, and dead people would not unsubscribe, so it had accumulated a total of 1.7 billion fans in the past 600 years. Only God knew how many of these 1.7 billion fans were still alive. On the 1st of January, 2012, this was the beginning of the most glorious period for the Yuzhang Sword Garrett's official account in the past 50 years. At 8 o'clock that night, the official account updated its first post after 3 years. It was titled warmly celebrating the coronation of Lord Jiyu Han, the swordsman of Yuzhang City. In the first 10 minutes after the article was posted, it did not attract any attention. This was because the number of living fans of this official account was too small, and the number of living people who saw this article for the first time was less than 100. As a result, almost 99 out of these 100 people thought that the administrator of the Yuzhang Sword Pavilion's official account had gone mad and written this inexplicable article that was full of crazy words. However, to everyone's surprise, 10 minutes later, the official WeChat account of the Yuzhang Sword Committee reposted the article. Yuzhang City Sword Committee's official WeChat account was different from the Sword Garrett's, which had no one managing it. This official account had a dedicated management team in charge. Every day, they would release the latest orders from the Sword Committee. It was one of the main channels for Yuzhang City to understand the officials' movements. It had a total of more than 2.8 billion fans, of which more than 10 million were active. It was truly a top official account. When such a public account reposted Jiang's article, its influence became terrifying. Countless people in Yuzhang City saw the article for the first time, and after a brief daze, the entire official public account was flooded with thousands of comments per minute. They only had one question. Is the management team of this public account out of their minds? Has Shalaji lost his mind? Or was he suffering from mental illness? Why would he publish such an inexplicable and nonsensical article? Seeing the questioning from the fans, the management team of the official account also expressed that they were very confused. This was because they didn't know about this matter from beginning to end. They themselves also felt that the article was full of nonsense. However, They couldn't do anything because this article was reposted with the highest authority on the official account. There was only one person with the highest authority on the official account, and that was the chairman of the Yuzhong City Sword Committee, Sword Immortal Ling Shu. In this regard, the management team could only stare at it and urgently send a letter to Sword Immortal Ling Shu for instructions. They soon received a reply. Sword Immortal Ling Shu only replied with one sentence, "Don't worry about anything." Just when the citizens who saw the article reposted by the Yuzhong City Sword Committee were still in a daze, an even more shocking situation occurred. The two people with the highest authority in Yuzhong City simultaneously used the authority of the Sword Garret Master and the authority of the Sword Committee to push this article to the entire city. They directly pushed it to the personal communications of every Yuzhong City citizen. They pushed it twice. This time, it was impossible for the people of Yuzhong City not to see this article even if they didn't want to. Of course, at first glance, all the citizens of Yuzhong City thought that the author of this article was crazy. The Dragon Kings of the Four Seas actually jointly promoted a Sea Emperor, and this Sea Emperor was not a member of the true Dragon Clan, but a human. He was their former Sword Garret Master, Guhan. This simply made the brains of the citizens of Yuzhong City explode. Moreover, this article was also extremely nonsensical. It said that the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas greatly admired Guhan's strength, that the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas were deeply impressed by Guhan's personality and charisma, that the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas decided to abandon their previous neutral attitude and mobilize the power of the entire Sea Tribe to help the human race. At the same time, they elected Guhan as the Sea Emperor to rule the Four Seas and become the common ruler of the human race and the Sea Tribe. What kind of joke was this? For hundreds of years, although the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas had maintained a neutral attitude, the number of ordinary humans and sword-bearers who died in the hands of the Sea Tribe added up to more than 1 million. The Sea Tribe had always maintained a considerable distance from the human race. How could the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas suddenly change their attitude and promote a human as the Sea Emperor? They even said that they would risk giving all the power of the true Dragon Clan to the human race. This was simply the biggest joke in the world. Even the Koreans of the past did not dare to brag like this. Such an article made people feel as if the United States had suddenly announced that it would voluntarily become a province of Huaxia, offering all its technological, industrial, and financial power to Huaxia. From now on, the United States and Huaxia would be one family, and everyone could live happily together. This was simply nonsense to the extreme. Even if such an article was posted on a slightly more authoritative public account, the citizens would not believe a word of it. However, the problem was that this article was jointly sent to them by the Yuzhong Sword Garret and the Sword Committee. With the two most authoritative public accounts in Yuzhong, even if the citizens felt that this article was extremely ridiculous, they could not help but want to believe it. Soon, this article spread from Yuzhong City to other base cities. The citizens of other base cities also saw this article through the sharing of their friends. Compared to the people of Yuzhong City who were skeptical, the people of other base cities were very straightforward. They straightforwardly said that Liu Shihua must be crazy, or that the management rights of the public account had been stolen. In any case, this could not be true. It was all nonsense. However, half an hour later, something happened that slapped them in the face. At 8:30 p.m. on January 1, 2012, the official public account of the London Sword Garret reposted the article of the Yuzhong Sword Garret and added a thumbs-up emoticon in front of the article. This caused the Londoners who originally firmly denied the authenticity of this article to gradually fall for it. Just 3 minutes later, the official public account of the London Sword Committee also reposted the article of the Yuzhong Sword Garret and added 2 words at the same time: awesome. Although these 2 public accounts did not promote this to all the citizens, it was no longer necessary. Almost all the citizens began to read this article online, and then felt that their worldview had been blown up for the 3rd time in a day. To have their worldview blown up 3 times in a day was probably something that they would never experience in their lifetime. At the same time, when the 2 authoritative public accounts of London also came out to confirm the matter, the authenticity of this article was greatly improved. About 30% of the people began to believe that this article was true. The authoritative leader of a base city could lose his mind, but it was impossible for the authoritative leaders of two base cities to lose their minds at the same time. What's more, there was also Longsha Jendi, who had just fought side by side with Guhan. In this matter, Longsha Jendi obviously had the first say. At 8:45 p.m., the two official public accounts of Jerusalem base city reposted this article at the same time, which also represented the arrival of a tsunami. At 8:47 p.m., the two official public accounts of Moscow base city reposted it at the same time. At 8:51 p.m., the two official public accounts of Berlin base city reposted it at the same time. At 8:52 p.m., the two official public accounts of Los Angeles base city reposted it at the same time. At 8:52 p.m., the two official public accounts of Buenos Aires base city reposted it at the same time. At 8:55 p.m., the two official public accounts of Yangjing, the last of the 8 major base cities, reposted this article at the same time. At the same time, the official public account of the Sword Committee also reposted it. This meant that all the official authoritative camps of human beings had confirmed the authenticity of this article, so the authenticity of this article was beyond doubt. This article was not the crazy talk of a madman, but a true fact. The Dragon Kings of the Four Seas were indeed going to let a human sit on the throne of the Sea Emperor. The whole internet was in an uproar. It was almost bedtime, but most netizens could not fall asleep. They were discussing frantically on the internet about what had happened in the past few hours. They were discussing what had happened between humans and the Sea Clan. Did they carry out some unspeakable PY transactions or something like that? It was a pity that no matter how heated the discussion on the internet was, it was just a group of people's imagination. In addition to reposting this article, the official public accounts of the major base cities did not release any other news, so the whole thing was shrouded in a fog. People could only pay attention to the public account of the Yuzhang Sword Garret, which had published the article in the first place. They wanted to see if this long-silent public account could release any news that would shock the netizens again. With the continuous attention of the newcomers, the number of fans of the Yuzhang Sword Garret began to rise crazily for the first time in 50 years. In just 2 hours, the number of fans increased by 30 million, and the total number of fans exceeded 1.7 billion to 1.8 billion. It was the craziest single-day increase since the Yuzhang Sword Garret's official account was launched, creating an unprecedented history. Unfortunately, the Sword Garret's official account remained silent for the next 4 hours. Just when netizens felt that there would be no more results today and were ready to go back to sleep and wait for the news tomorrow, the Yuzhang Sword Garret's official account published the second article at midnight on January 2nd. The coronation ceremony will be held in the Sea Palace in 3 days. The official list of attendees of the ceremony is hereby announced. It turned out that the Yuzhang Sword Garret's article was mainly a list of names, mainly listing the list of attendees of the coronation ceremony. Among them, the name at the top was Longsha Jendi's name, followed by a long list of immortal swordbearers and some top figures in society. Except for Haotian Jendi, who did not show up as usual, almost all the big shots and giants of mankind appeared on this list. However, netizens quickly noticed that the name of Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng was not on this list. This was a very strange thing. It should be known that this ancestor of mankind, who had lived for thousands of years, suddenly appeared in front of the public. He was very keen to appear on various occasions. In just a year and a half, almost all humans had known the story of Yingzheng, and Yingzheng's diehard fans had reached tens of millions. He could be said to be a celebrity in the human world, second only to the 2 emperor swordbearers. However, such a well-known figure did not appear on the list of the coronation ceremony, which made netizens feel very curious and strange. However, in addition to the list, this second article also leaked some other information. For example, the authenticity of the matter had been confirmed once again, and the grand coronation ceremony would be held in 3 days. At the same time, including the official media of the 8 major base cities and a private media, a total of 9 media outlets had obtained the special live broadcast rights, becoming the only media that could enter the Sea Palace to broadcast the coronation ceremony live. At that time, all questions could be answered in the live broadcast 3 days later. Although the news had been announced, the waves did not subside. Instead, the The waves were getting higher and higher. The news that Longsha Jendi had killed 3 Hong-level Yuan Ku warriors had been completely suppressed by the name of Guhan. People were no longer interested in discussing Longsha Jendi's great achievements. They wanted to know who this Guhan was. Just how powerful was he? How did he become the Sea Emperor, respected by the Dragon Kings of the 4 seas? These 3 questions deeply tortured the nerves of the vast number of netizens. They were eager to know the answer to this question. The first question seemed to be easy to answer. After all, Guhan's information could be found in the Sword Committee's database of sword bearers. It could also be found in the official website of Yuzhang City. However, the information was very simple and rough, and could not be used to understand Guhan in detail. Therefore, netizens who were good at collecting information quickly sorted out the most detailed information about Guhan that ordinary people could know so far. Guhan, male, born on July 6, 2990. When he was 6 years old, he experienced the Great Attack of Yuzhang City. His parents died tragically, and his life after that was unknown. After reaching the age of 18, he participated in the synchronization of the ancient sword Maiden and obtained the original sword Maiden that had never appeared before, the Qingpin sword. Later, he encountered Medusa in the wild and was seriously injured. Coincidentally, he was accepted as the last disciple by the late former sword pavilion master of Yuzhang City. At the same time, he became a sword bearer of the treasure sword tier. He successfully synchronized with the strongest sword Maiden, the heavenly sword, and became the 3rd sword bearer in 1,000 years. At the same time, he represented Yuzhang City in the first Changyang Mountain trial and won, receiving the reward left by Zhetian Jendi. When he returned, Yuzhang City was attacked 4 years ago. He led less than 100 sword-bearers to recapture the Yeyang fortress and received the defeated sword-bearers of Yuzhang City. Finally, he snuck back to Yuzhang City and led the remaining sword-bearers as the sword pavilion master. Finally, when the reinforcements arrived, he cooperated with the 9 Heavens sword deity to kill the U-level Yuan Ku Loki and successfully defended Yuzhang City. Later, he was tried by the Discipline Commission for Discipline Inspection for killing an ordinary person in a fit of righteous indignation. Although he was acquitted, Guhan was filled with righteous indignation and passed the position of sword pavilion master to his disciple, Lu Shihua. At that time, Lu Shihua was just an ordinary person, so one could imagine Guhan's boldness and temper. Later, he represented Yuzhang University in the 8 Academies tournament and defeated all the sword-bearers of the so-called Golden Generation, including Liunian Ling, the direct descendant of the Liunian family, and became the champion of the 8 Academies tournament. Later, because of the Shanhai Pass riot, he was urgently dispatched to Shanhai Pass and cooperated with Qin Shi Huangying Zheng to kill all the great sorcerers. After that, he guarded Shanhai Pass for 3 years. In the end, because he resisted the order of the Sword Commission to continue guarding Shanhai Pass, he fought with the sword spirit of Gui Temple who came to stop him. Immediately, the Sword Commission issued a joint arrest order for the 8 base cities and disappeared without a trace in the next few months. Today, he appeared outside London and assisted Longsha Jendi in killing Guan Yu, Tesla, and Temujin, the 3 flood-level Yuan Ku Loki. In addition, the sisters Jiyu Shahan and Jiyu Shenyuan are Guhan's biological sisters, and they also have terrifying strength. However, the sisters are extremely mysterious, and no one can find any relevant information about them. Chapter 1246. It had to be admitted that although the content of this profile was not much, and there were many missing parts, some key events were correct, and it could describe Guhan's life in more detail. This profile quickly spread throughout the internet, and countless netizens carefully studied it over and over again. Finally, they came to the conclusion that, in terms of personal experience, this Guhan was really awesome. Except for the experience of his parents dying at the beginning, the rest of his experience was something that 99,999% of human beings couldn't do. In terms of achievements, this Guhan's achievements had surpassed 99% of the sword-bearers in the world. As for his strength, it was still unknown, but he was definitely one of the top fighting forces of human beings. Therefore, whether it was talent or ability, Guhan was a veritable powerhouse. It was somewhat reasonable for such a person to become a candidate for Sea Emperor. It was just that the majority of netizens still couldn't understand how the position of Sea Emperor could fall on a human's head. Moreover, the position of Sea Emperor should not be decided by strength. Otherwise, the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas could directly invite Longsha Jendi to be Sea Emperor. Why did they choose this Guhan who suddenly appeared out of nowhere? Since they could not find any more answers from the biographies, some of them went back to the videos and began to study them carefully without missing a single detail. They also found some high-leveled sword-wielding friends to investigate and ask questions. In the end, someone posted a thread on the forum titled "How Scary is Solid Cold?", a detailed analysis of the Battle of London video. This post first analyzed Guhan's level and confirmed that Guhan was undoubtedly a spirit sword level swordbearer. Then it analyzed the stage where the 3 flood level Yuan Ku hadn't used the rule power, and Guhan and the pirate sword immortal each resisted a flood level Yuan Ku. The original poster took a lot of screenshots, all of which were screenshots of Guhan's expressions. He pointed out that Guhan's expression was very relaxed at this stage, without any expression of embarrassment, indicating that such a battle was very simple for Guhan and would not cause Guhan any trouble. At the same time, he also took a video of the battle, and then analyzed it frame by frame, showing that Guhan's swordsmanship had reached an unpredictable stage. No matter how the opponent attacked, it was impossible to break free from Guhan's sword net. He also went to find a video of the battle of the Wanmi sword spirit, who was known as the number 1 Kanzu. Similarly, by comparing it frame by frame, he came to the conclusion that Guhan's swordsmanship was far superior to the Wanmi sword spirit. He could be called the number 1 sword master of mankind. In terms of swordsmanship, Guhan was already the undisputed number 1 in the human world. Then there was the stage where the rule power was activated. The original poster pointed out that the pirate sword immortal gave his opponent to Guhan the first time the rule power was activated. Because the pirate sword immortal couldn't fight against Guan Yu, who was using the rule power, but Guhan was able to resist Guan Yu, and he was still the number 1 swordmaster of mankind. In terms of swordsmanship, Guhan was already the indisputable number 1 in the human world. The original poster concluded, "This is no longer a stage that ordinary swordsmanship can reach." The original poster concluded, "I asked a fairy swordmaster who didn't want to reveal his name. He told me that only rule power can resist rule power. This means that this Guhan can already use rule power that only Emperor sword wielders can use when he is a spirit sword level sword wielder." I also asked this fairy sword master, "Has there been anyone else in history who has reached such a stage?" This master thought for a long time, and finally, with some hesitation, told me that Master Kanzu must have reached this stage back then, and Jitian Jendi may have also reached this stage. He couldn't be sure about the other sword wielders, but there was most likely no 4th person. So we can come to this conclusion: Guhan's talent has already reached the level of Kanzu and Jitian Jendi. However, the above is not the main point of this post. Compared to what I'm going to announce next, the previous content of the post becomes worthless. At this point in the post, the original poster used thousands of ellipses and exclamation marks to express his inner shock. At the same time, he also divided the post into 2 parts. What I want to tell everyone is that this Guhan has 2 sword maidens. Readers may be wondering, what's wrong with a sword wielder having 2 sword maidens? Don't sword wielders at treasure sword level have 2 sword maidens? But that's not the case, because Guhan has 2 spiritual sword maidens at the same time. Yes, you haven't seen it, Guhan has 2 spiritual sword maidens of the same level. Everyone has read books when they were young, regardless of whether it's textbooks or casual books, even those illusory street stalls. These books only boast about how awesome and powerful the sword wielder is, but no author has ever dared to say that a sword wielder has 2 sword maidens of the same level, because in the minds of these authors, this is an impossible thing. It can even be called the Arabian Nights. But now, this Arabian Nights has come true. Guhan has used an undeniable fact to tell us that a sword wielder can have 2 sword maidens of the same level. Ordinary people may not know what this means. I'll give you an example. All my sword wielder friends around me are almost going crazy. There's only one topic they're discussing, and that's Guhan, and how Guhan has two spiritual sword maidens. The popularity of this topic has always been maintained at the highest state. Even the announcement of the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas to jointly elect Guhan as Ocean Emperor 12 hours ago did not break the popularity of this topic. What the sword wielder is most concerned about is how Guhan has two spiritual sword maidens. This original poster wrote a lot more content, but in summary, they all had the same meaning. It was used to show how incredible it was for Guhan to have two spiritual sword maidens at the same time, how magical it was, and how it broke humans' worldview. He wrote this at the end of the post. In this way, the author can't help but make such a conjecture. The reason why Guhan can be evenly matched with flood-level Yuan Ku as a spiritual sword-level sword wielder, the reason why he can master the power of rules at spiritual sword level, and even the reason why he can be elected as Ocean Emperor by the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas, is because Guhan has two spiritual sword maidens at the same time. This is the reason for all unscientific events. Any unscientific results can only be found by using unscientific reasons. Finally, I'd like to say that the above is the author's personal conjecture. It doesn't represent the actual situation, but the author might as well say something now as the truth. Guhan's strength has reached an indisputable level. If there's no accident, Guhan will become the same as Jitian Jendi and Jiyu Jin Jendi, the leader of the new generation of human beings, and also the most powerful sword wielder. What's more frightening is that Guhan is only 22 years old now. If he doesn't die halfway, Guhan can generally live to 80 years old. In other words, in the future, human beings will be shrouded in the shadow of Guhan for 60 years. We can kneel down and shout "Long live His Majesty Guhan" in advance. Finally, I'd like to say, Sword Committee, don't forget that Guhan's joint arrest order of the 8 base cities is still there. You'd better remove this arrest order as soon as possible. Otherwise, I don't know where your old face will go. This analysis post spread on the internet at a shocking speed. Soon, netizens who were extremely interested in Guhan saw this analysis post and were shocked. They studied this analysis post like it was a textbook and said that the original poster was right. In the future, they could shout His Majesty Guhan. After a series of events, Guhan's reputation was pushed to the peak among humans. They thought that Guhan could rule for 60 years and become the next Jitian Jendi. There was a lot of discussion about how strong Guhan was. Most netizens thought that Guhan's strength was at least equivalent to a top immortal sword wielder. A small group of netizens thought that Guhan's strength was already comparable to an emperor sword wielder. There was also a small group of netizens who shouted that Guhan was invincible. They thought that Guhan was now the number one person in the human world. They thought that Guhan could beat the Hall of Valor, kick the Heavenly Court, and lead humans to completely end this chaotic era. Looking at the whole discussion, no one thought that Guhan's strength was at the level of a spirit sword wielder. Just what is our solid cold doing when all this clamor is going on? In fact, our Guhan was having a terrible headache because Guhan's temporary residence had become a pot of porridge. Other than Juzi, who still stood quietly beside Guhan, all the sword ladies were in a state of quarrel. And our Miss Qingpin was standing on Guhan's head, screaming loudly with her Lolita voice. If it wasn't for Guhan's sword chi barrier that sealed all the sound waves, it was likely that the surrounding residents would take out their weapons and look for Guhan to settle the score. How could they let people sleep at night? As for the reason for the quarrel, it was very simple, and that was the problem of Guhan's title. After this battle, Guhan's name had become known in the world. Everyone knew that Guhan was already a spirit sword wielder, so a crucial problem immediately appeared. Guhan had to confirm his title as soon as possible and then register it at the Sword Committee headquarters. Otherwise, the enthronement ceremony in 3 days would become very awkward. Confirming the title was a matter of course. After every sword wielder became a spirit sword wielder, they would have their own title. For example, Zhetian from Zhejendi, Longshe from Longshe Jendi, Huramai from Huramai Sword Spirit, Yunxiao from Yunxiao Sword Immortal. These were all their titles. Moreover, when addressing others would generally call you by your title instead of calling you by your name. Otherwise, it would be very impolite and disrespectful to the sword wielder. In this world, there was only one person who had surpassed the spirit sword level without a title, and that was the Flowing Year Sword Ancestor. The Flowing Year Sword Ancestor did not have any title. The name of the Flowing Year Sword Ancestor was given to him by his descendants. When the Flowing Year Sword Ancestor was alive, everyone called him by his surname. If someone dared to give the Flowing Year Sword Ancestor a title, they would definitely be cursed by the Flowing Year Sword Ancestor. But what was strange was that the title was invented by Kunzu, and the first title in the world was also named by Kunzu. The entire title system was mostly established by Kunzu, but Kunzu didn't use any title in his life. It was indeed a bit strange, but Kunzu was Kunzu. All the strangeness of Kunzu was so reasonable. After all, great people always had some eccentricities. So after the banquet, people from the London City Sword Committee came to find Guhan on behalf of the Sword Committee HQ and told Guhan that he had to give himself a title within 12 hours. Otherwise, the Sword Committee HQ would help Guhan choose a title. Even an idiot would know that with the current terrible state of the Sword Committee HQ and Guhan, the Sword Committee HQ would definitely not give Guhan a good title. In fact, what Guhan didn't know was that if the news of Poseidon hadn't been announced, the Sword Committee HQ would have already given Guhan a title. It was a title that would make everyone laugh. In the end, because of the appearance of Poseidon's title, the Sword Committee HQ, who still had a bit of rationality, did not announce their title. Instead, they hid it deep in a wooden box and no one mentioned it again. Many years later, when the Sword Committee headquarters moved from Yangjing City to Hongjun City, this wooden box was discovered by the later generations. Only then did the later generations know how despicable the people of the Sword Committee headquarters were at that time and how annoying the title was for Ji Han. The naming rights of the title returned to Guhan's hands. For a moment, Guhan was at a loss. During this period of time, he was either fighting or scheming, so much so that Guhan completely forgot about the title. Ji Han didn't know what to do when he was suddenly brought up by the Sword Committee today. He couldn't think of a title to give himself at the moment. If it was possible, Guhan wanted to directly name his title Guhan. That would be so much simpler and better. It was a pity that since ancient times, there had never been a sword wielder who would use their own name for a title. Although Ji Han did not stick to a single pattern, he still felt that it was very awkward when he thought about it carefully, so he gave up. It was Guhan's fault. He couldn't think of a satisfactory title, so he threw this problem to Chijian and let it think for him. Chijian's reaction was very fast. In a blink of an eye, it put its body into Guhan's arms. The soft body with the fragrance of meat couldn't help but make Guhan a little restless. While Chijian teased Guhan's body, it said in a sweet voice, "Guhan, how about this? Your title will be called Chijian Sword Spirit. It sounds so nice and poetic." "Oh, that's fine too." Ji Han nodded thoughtfully. Sword Spirit of Chijian sounded like a pretty good title. But before Guhan could say another word, a body bomb fell from the sky and hit Guhan's face hard. Together with a small milky panty, a small, fragrant panty, it smeared on Guhan's face. "No. Guhan, how can you give yourself such a title?" Qingpin overheard the conversation between Guhan and Chijian, so it jumped on Guhan's face and used its panty to slap Guhan's face. Then it sat on Guhan's neck and said, "What Chijian Sword Spirit? It doesn't sound good at all." Qingpin Sword Spirit sounds better. It's obvious that Guhan is Qingpin's sword wielder, and Qingpin is Guhan's sword mother. This is the best title. Good my ass. What kind of swordsman would call his title poor? Chijian, whose plan was interrupted by Qingpin, immediately jumped up and objected. Qingpin, do you want Guhan to live with the two words Qingpin for the rest of his life? Will he be laughed at and called a pauper? What's wrong with Qingpin? Qingpin is so cute, so Qingpin should be called Qingpin. Qingpin cried and made a fuss. His loud voice immediately attracted the attention of the other sword maidens. Therefore, other than Juzi and Shishui, all the sword maidens began to make a fuss, saying that Guhan must use his own name for his title. Especially Juexian, whose voice surpassed all the other sword maidens. She looked like she was going to poke a few holes in Guhan's body if Guhan didn't use Juexian as his title. Chapter 1247. Humph, I'm Jiyu Han's first sword maiden, and I'm his rightful wife. I sleep with Jiyu Han every night, so this title should be named after me. Do you have any objections? Chidian took the initiative to attack. She spoke with the aura of an empress. Nonsense. Qingpin is Guhan's first sword maiden, Qingpin protested. Also, Qingpin sleeps with Guhan at night. She sleeps with Guhan much more than you do. Qingpin should be Guhan's title. Pervert. You sleep with a kid like Qingpin every night. Zhu Xian looked at Guhan in disdain after hearing Qingpin's words. You're overthinking it. I put Qingpin in my room every night, but she always shows up on my bed the next day and shoves her feet into my mouth. I can't do anything about it. Guhan explained with a bitter smile. Isn't it just sleeping? I've slept with Guhan too. This title should be mine. Xian Yuan's sword floated in the air and muttered. She was the only sword maiden who didn't have her own female form. She could only speak in her original form. Come on, you're not Guhan's sword maiden yet. How dare you fight for Guhan's title? Juexian slapped Xian Yuan's sword away and said loudly, I think we should use my sisters and my name as the title. Sword Spirit of Slayer. It sounds so nice. What's so nice about it? Killing and severing. People would think that our family's Jiyu Han is an assassin. Chidian rolled its eyes and pulled Ju's arm. How about this? Let's call him Sword Spirit of Orange. It sounds so nice. You're all in a group, aren't you? When Yi Tian saw this, he immediately pulled Qingpin into his arms and announced loudly, then Qingpin and I will be together, and will be called the Pure Heaven Sword Spirit. Yes. This Pure Heaven Sword Spirit is not bad, much more reliable than the Sword of Extinction Sword Spirit and the Orange Dot Sword Spirit. Hearing this, Guhan couldn't help but nod. This Clear Heaven's Sword Spirit was probably the most pleasing title Guhan had heard so far. Then we'll call ourselves the Fish and Water Sword Spirit. In the end, Du Yu had no choice but to pull past Water Sword, who didn't want to participate in the battle, and formed a group with past Water Sword. As a result, the original battle situation became a battle between pairs. The sword ladies huddled together and started a new round of quarrels. As the battle situation became more and more intense, the passing Water Sword and Juzi Sword that did not intend to join the battle were abandoned by their teammates. Du Yu Sword and Qi Dian Sword reunited to form the Raindrop Sword Spirit. TSK, the battle situation could be said to be unprecedentedly tragic. Faced with this situation, Guhan was helpless. He never thought that a title would cause his sword ladies to quarrel to this extent. Every sword lady wanted Guhan to use their own name as the title. If it was possible, Guhan wanted to smooth things over. For example, he could choose a word from each sword lady's name as his own title. However, the problem was that Guhan currently had 9 sword ladies. If he chose a word from each of them, it would probably be called Clear Water Sword Spirits, Dojuzi Sword Spirits. Well, if this title was made known to others, Guhan would be the first to go crazy. Since ancient times, titles had always been 2 words. Guhan didn't want to be unconventional on this point. Alright, all of you give up. I won't use your names as my titles. Even an idiot could tell that if Guhan used one of the sword ladies' names as his title, Guhan would completely offend all the other sword ladies. Therefore, Guhan would never do such a thing. Bastard. If you don't want to use our names as your title, you should have said so earlier. We almost got into a fight. Don't ruin the harmony between us sisters. Hearing Guhan's words, the arguing sword ladies said in unison. However, Guhan was so embarrassed that he could only smile bitterly. How about this? I won't be biased. Each of you can think of a title that has nothing to do with your name and give it to me. I'll put it in a secret box and use the title of whoever draws it. That's the fairest way. What do you think? In desperation, Guhan could only use this method that seemed the smartest, but was actually the stupidest. Everything would be decided by the heavens. Okay, that's a good idea, the sword ladies said in unison. In reality, the sword ladies were only fighting to prove their position in Guhan's heart. However, they would never get a result if they continued to fight like this. It was better to leave everything to the heavens. That way, no one would gain an advantage. I'll give you 5 minutes. Each of you write your name on this poker card and put it in this box. Guhan took out 9 poker cards and a box and distributed the poker cards. As for Shenyuan's sword, which could not transform into a sword lady, Guhan asked Juzi to write it for Shenyuan. The fastest one was Juzi. In just 10 seconds, Juzi handed the poker card to Guhan. Guhan took a look and his eyes lit up. Chaos Sword Spirit. This is a good title. Since the sword art I created is called Chaos Sword Art, it's great that my title is Chaos. Seeing this title, Ji Han patted Juzi's head happily. Although he really wanted to use this title called Chaos, since he had promised the other sword maidens to draw it, Ji Han had no right to go back on his words. He had no choice but to put the poker card into the box and pray that it would be drawn out. I've written it too. To Guhan's surprise, the second one to hand in the paper was Duyu. This little guy's handwriting was not bad. Although it was a little immature, it was better than the writing of his peers. Heaven Fighting Sword Spirit. Guhan looked at the title written on the poker card and thought it was a good title. His whole life was the process of fighting against heaven. Well, I can draw this title too. Shenyuan's sword was the one to hand in the paper after Duyu. On this poker card, written by Juzi, there were 2 extremely arrogant words: Human Sovereign Sword Spirit. What do you think? Isn't it domineering? It's awesome. Shenyuan's sword said proudly, let me tell you, Guhan, you must have the domineering aura of a human sovereign. All the humans in the world will belong to us, and all the beauties in the world will also belong to us. When the time comes, we'll split the beauties in half. By the way, I only like beauties with big breasts. Those flat-chested lollis will belong to you. Belong to you, my ass. Guhan flicked the blade of Shenyuan's sword with force. The title of human sovereign sounded very domineering. If Guhan ascended to the throne and became an emperor sword-level sword wielder, no one would dare to stop him from using this title. But now, he was only at spirit sword level. It was estimated that Long Shijendi, who lived not far away, would be the first to object, unless he, Long Shijendi, was willing to be led by Guhan. Kill Sword Spirit. Kill Sword Spirit again. The 4th and 5th to hand in the paper were Kill Immortal Sword and Extinguish Immortal Sword. As a result, the titles they proposed were exactly the same. Moreover, they continued the titles that they had decided during the quarrel. When Chijian and the other sword ladies raised their objections, Extinguish Immortal Sword said eloquently, this title of Kill Sword Spirit was not the name of any sword lady, and it was not within the scope of Guhan's restrictions. Of course, it could be used normally. Moreover, Guhan did not prohibit 2 sword ladies from proposing the same title. Therefore, all their actions were within the scope of the rules. It was a correct and legal action. The other sword ladies could not win against these 2 cunning guys. They could only let the other side put the playing card room with Kill Sword Spirit written on it into the box. That's it. Extinguish Immortal Sword shook its fist. In this way, the probability of Kill Sword Spirit being chosen was 2/9, which was the highest probability of the title. Guhan, how do you write the word love? Suddenly, Qingpin raised his head and asked Guhan. In the end, Guhan saw a little face that had been painted black. Qingpin did not know how to write at all. Not only did he get his hands covered in ink, he even rubbed the ink on his face. In the end, he looked like a little mud man. The playing card was also covered in ink. The word Qingpin was written crookedly on it. However, Qingpin did not seem to know how to write the word love, so he raised his head and asked Guhan in distress. Do you want to add the word love in the front or the back? Guhan asked Qingpin with a bitter smile. In the front. In the front. Qingpin raised his hand and flung the ink on Guhan's face. So you want me to call it Love Sword Spirit? Guhan smiled even more bitterly. What was this? Love Sword Spirit? If Guhan took this title, his reputation would probably be completely ruined. However, a gentleman's words could not be taken back. Although his heart was extremely resistant, Guhan finally found a new playing card and wrote the words Love Sword Spirit on it for Qingpin. Under the supervision of a silly smile on Qingpin's face, he put the playing card into the box. Hihi, Qingpin and I are good sisters. Seeing that we often drink together, I'll make it the same as Qingpin. Perhaps seeing the bitter smile on Guhan's face, Yi Tian, who had always harbored ill intentions towards Guhan, rolled her eyes and wrote the words Love Sword Spirit on the playing card that she had not touched for a long time. Then, she proudly handed it to Guhan. Hihi. Guhan laughed dryly. He could only helplessly put the playing card into the box. Thank you. My good sister Yi Tian. Qingpin happily hugged Yi Tian, and the two of them rolled together. Qingpin's little face kept rubbing against Yi Tian's. In the end, the two of them turned black together. Retribution. Guhan snorted, then looked at Qijian and Shishui. Until now, only these two people had not handed over their playing cards. There's half a minute left. If you exceed this time, don't blame me for cancelling your chance, Guhan urged. As a result, Qijian immediately handed over its playing card. Guhan fixed his eyes on it. Unparalleled sword spirit. Guhan raised his head curiously and looked at Qijian in front of him. Guhan, you will always be the unparalleled person in my heart. There will never be a second you in this world. You are my everything, Qijian said affectionately. Qijian. Jiyu Han was touched, and the two of them naturally hugged each other. The atmosphere had been brewed to an excellent point. Just as the two of them were about to have a romantic kiss, an uninvited guest interrupted all of this. Here you go. The uninvited guest handed the playing card in his hand directly in front of Guhan, and inserted it between Guhan and Qijian's lips, completely blocking the two hungry lips. Well done, Shishui. Piss off these two shameless people. Zhuxian clapped and cheered. Qijian rolled its eyes meaningfully. Shishui, what's the origin of this name? Guhan looked at the title written on the playing card, and his face showed some confusion. Guhan recognized the two words that formed the title, but when these two words were put together, Guhan did not recognize them. Guhan had never heard of this word on the playing card, so he could not help but ask Shishui. I don't know either. Shishui shook her head and said faintly, this is what my father told me. He said that this is a name that can change the world. Yes. Guhan nodded non-committally and put the playing card into the box. At this point, the 9 playing cards with 7 different titles were all put into the box. All the sword maidens looked at the wooden box, eager to know which card would win in the end and become Guhan's title. I will throw this box into the sky, and then I will fight against the sword chi. The first card that falls to the ground will be the winner. Guhan told all the sword maidens the rules, and then threw the box into the air without hesitation. In the next second, a sword chi directly hit the box, and the entire box was smashed into pieces. However, the playing cards in the box were not damaged at all. After floating to the highest point, they began to slowly fall. It could be seen that Guhan's control over his power was extremely exquisite. There was clearly a sword chi that hit the box, but the playing cards in the box did not seem to be affected at all. They continued to rise according to their original inertia for a period of time, and finally lost their inertia at the same time, and slowly fell down like a leaf. Which one is it? The sword maidens stared closely at the playing cards that fell in the air. Very soon, a playing card stood out and was slightly ahead of the other playing cards. If there were no changes, this playing card would definitely be the first to fall to the ground. Mine. It's my playing card. Yi Tian suddenly shouted happily. Just now, the playing card flipped slightly, revealing the words written on the front. It was clearly the two words Ari Qing written by Yi Tian. Qingpin, we won. We won. Yi Tian and Qingpin excitedly hugged each other and shouted, while the other sword maidens' faces were filled with envy. They were all sword experts, so they had the ability to determine the trajectory of the playing cards. They had clearly confirmed that Yi Tian's playing card would fall first, and Yi Tian and Qingpin were definitely going to win. However, nothing in this world would go as smoothly as imagined. The Heavenly Swords poker card, which originally had a slight advantage, seemed to have been disturbed by some kind of airflow. It suddenly stopped in the air for less than 0.3 seconds. However, this 0.3 seconds was enough to change the world. The poker card that was originally in second place instantly replaced the Heavenly Swords position. In the end, it was the first to land on the ground, and was immediately grabbed by Ji Han. Cheating. Someone is cheating. Someone is using sword chi to disturb my playing card. This scene instantly caused Yi Tian to explode. She jumped out angrily, pointed at all the sword maidens and shouted, "Who is it? Who is using such a shameless method to cheat? Come out, I'm going to beat you up so badly that even your mother won't recognize you." Enough. Gu Han forcefully knocked Yi Tian's head. "No one is disturbing you, you're the one who's disturbing you. I saw it clearly, if it wasn't for you hugging Qingpin and jumping around, there wouldn't be any airflow disturbing your playing card. As the saying goes, don't be happy too early." Chapter 1248. Since Gu Han said that Yi Tian and Qingpin reaped what they sowed, even Yi Tian and Qingpin had nothing to say. All the sword ladies knew Gu Han's personality. Gu Han would never lie about this kind of thing. Since Gu Han said it, then it must be true. Annoying. "I don't like you anymore." Qingpin heartlessly pushed Yi Tian away. His small face was filled with the word unkind, causing Yi Tian to feel sad. However, the other sword ladies didn't pay attention to this pair of clowns at all. They were all staring at the poker card in Gu Han's hand. Because all the sword ladies were paying attention to Yi Tian's poker card, no one saw what was written on the second poker card. But now, the situation had been reversed. Other than Ji Han, who was holding the card, none of the sword ladies knew what was written on the card. "I didn't expect this. It's actually this poker card." Gu Han raised his head and glanced at the sword ladies beside him with a bitter smile. He then brought the poker card in front of Shishui and asked in an extremely serious tone, "Shishui, tell me the truth. Do you really not know what this word means?" Never in a million years would he have thought that the last poker card chosen would be the past water sword's poker card. So, Gu Han's last title was actually thought up by Shishui, who had the coldest relationship with Gu Han. "I only know that it's a person's name. I don't know anything else," Shishui said faintly. However, Gu Han had a feeling that Shishui definitely knew something. She just didn't want to tell him. "I say, can you two stop talking in riddles?" "Shishui, what did you write? You're so mysterious." Zhu Xian could no longer suppress the curiosity in his heart. He instantly appeared beside Gu Han and snatched the poker card from Gu Han's hand. Of course, this was because Gu Han didn't stop him. Otherwise, even Zhu Xian wouldn't be able to snatch something from Gu Han's hand so easily. "Who the hell are you? How do you know this name?" However, what Gu Han did not expect was that the extinguished celestial sword only took a glance at the poker card before immediately drawing out his extinguished celestial sword and pressing it against Shishui's throat. The expression on his face was extremely nervous, as if he was a member of the true dragon clan whose reverse scale had been poked. "Little sister, what are you doing?" Zhu Xian's actions shocked Zhu Xian and he immediately asked. "I'm too lazy to explain. Sister, just look at this poker card and you'll understand." The celestial extinguished sword threw the poker card to the celestial execution sword. The celestial execution sword glanced at the words on the poker card and its entire body trembled. "What does it say? Let me have a look too." Xian Yuan sword's curiosity was completely aroused. It flew directly to the back of Zhu Xian's sword and secretly glanced at the poker card. Then Xian Yuan's sword directly fell from its floating state, but didn't say a word. "What's wrong with you guys? What did the name on the card mean? Why did you guys have such a big reaction?" The reactions of the extinguished celestial sword, the celestial execution sword and the Xian Yuan sword shocked Gu Han. At the same time, it also made Gu Han understand that this name was probably not ordinary. It might even be related to the legendary sect leader of Tongtian. "This is a name that should have been forgotten," Zhu Xian's sword said faintly. "That's right. But now this name has been mentioned by someone, and it's about to become your title. This is very interesting." The extinguished celestial sword's expression changed more than 10 times in an instant. Finally, it asked Shishui once again, "Who the hell are you? Why did you take this title? You deliberately planned to become Gu Han's sword lady. What do you want?" "I am the past water sword. My father told me this name." I don't know anything else. Shui did not care about the blade of the extinguished celestial sword at all. She still spoke calmly. You're not an ordinary person to know this name. Apart from that family, there's definitely no one else in this world who knows this name. Stop pretending, or I'll really kill you. Extinguished celestial sword said fiercely. I'm not lying. If you want to kill me, then kill me. After saying that, the past water sword shut his mouth tightly. You. Just as the extinguished celestial sword was about to attack, he was stopped by an arm. Don't make things difficult for her. She's my sword lady. Guhan grabbed the extinguished celestial sword's hand and forcefully let her go. Then he said, Is that family you mentioned the Leonian family? If it is, then there's nothing strange about it. She has the blood of the Leonian family. Her father was the previous family leader of the Leonian family. It's not strange that her father would know this name. What? What kind of joke is this? How could someone from the Leonian family be a sword lady? Extinguished celestial sword was shocked. Disbelief was written all over his face. Didn't you already see her memories when you pulled her into the illusion? Why do you still ask? Guhan said in confusion. She's very special. Her soul is slightly different from the souls of normal sword ladies. Furthermore, her love for you is very passionate, the most passionate of all the sword ladies. It's very difficult for me to control her with my illusion, let alone read her memories. Extinguished celestial sword explained. Her soul is indeed not the soul of a normal sword lady. Wait. What did you just say? Guhan recalled what extinguished celestial sword had said. His expression instantly froze. You mean, Shishure's feelings for me, her feelings for you are very passionate. Is there a problem with that? Extinguished celestial sword looked at Guhan and Shishue curiously. Have you forgotten? You had to put in a lot of effort to win the love of the other sword ladies before the incantation took effect. Was just an ordinary poker card. But this sword lady, yet you didn't do anything. Han was able to easily insert the poker card into the solid dimensional alloy. And she immediately recovered all her memories. It could be seen that Ji Han's control over his strength had reached a certain level. That's why the poker card was left on the ceiling of the London hotel. With some hesitation. It was not until a few years later when the hotel was renovated and rebuilt she wouldn't have been pulled into my illusion. Found the legendary poker card in the ceiling. Why do you think the Sword of Victory after another 100 years didn't appear in my illusion? The construction worker's family was in ruins, celestial so his descendants brought the only poker sword lady who has extreme love for you would be hard to control by my illusion. The entire auction market she would just have to recite the incantation and she would return to a high price of 1. Guhan felt a little dizzy. If what extinguished celestial this was a poker card was true, that decided then didn't that mean that Shishue, after receiving the poker card, who seemed to be the most estranged from looked at the poker card for a full day and a night, turned around and there were only two words written on the poker card. In the end, Hongjian's sword spirit, whose face was completely red, the title didn't that wait Guhan finally decided on. She immediately returned. The London Sword Committee received a message from Guhan. This is a little telling them that he had decided to use Hongjian as his title. He took the poker card from Extinguished Celestial Sword Committee Association directly. He looked at it carefully a few times was that although the Sword Committee Association asked Guhan to quickly report his title be used or not, they never lifted the wanted order for Guhan. Extinguished Celestial Sword began to hesitate. Bothered to pay attention to the Sword Committee Association with thousands of words about its reputation. But in the end, she didn't say a single word to the London Sword Committee. Clearly, there were many things hidden in her heart. The London Sword Committee did not report the results to the Sword Committee Association for the first time. Extinguished Celestial Sword it was handed over to Long Shijendi. If Long Shijendi is really the second person in the world to learn about then this title is very likely to mean fleeting calendar. What does it mean? As for his descendants, Long Shijendi still trust that he was knowledgeable. Moreover, there were not many words in the world that he did not understand. This is a great title, but the newly decided really title of Guhan really made chances of winning are no longer the reflection of the moon in the water. What did this Hongjian mean? But the reflection of the flower in the mirror and the moon in the water. The dragon lion sword emperor. When you put it like that, it sounds quite reasonable. Since he couldn't figure it out, Extinguished Celestial Sword nodded with a slightly playful look on her face. Then,
the database
a smile
of the Sword
gradually
Committee
began to blossom on her
was
face.
the most comprehensive
Finally,
database
she
in the
smiled
world.
and said to Guhan,
If it wasn't in the
I think this
database of the
title
Sword
is very
Committee
good.
Association,
Guhan,
then he
you
wouldn't
can
be
just
able to
use
find
this
the meaning
title.
of this word
The
anywhere
future
else
will
on the
definitely
internet.
be very interesting.
What made Longsha
Fine,
Jendi
it's
feel a
just
little
a title.
desperate was that
It's
the
just a
database
name
of the
that
Sword
people
Committee
call me.
Association
Since
did
the
not have
heavens
the
have
meaning of this
decided on this
word.
title,
It felt
then it's
like
decided
Guhan
to be
had
this
forcibly
title.
put these two
Guhan
words
took
together.
one last look at the
Forget
poker
it.
card in his hand.
It's none of my
then
business
directly
what
flew
people
out
like
and
to
cut
call me.
cleanly into the
Why
ceiling.
should I worry about it? Longsha Jendi smiled bitterly and transferred Guhan's title to the Sword Committee Association. After this was done, Longsha Jendi was ready to rest. But just as he took off his clothes, he opened his personal terminal and sent Guhan's title to a communication number marked with the name Fleeting Wooden Fish. Hongjun Sword Spirit. In the distant fleeting mountain of Yangjing City, Fleeting Wooden Fish, who had not slept, had been staring at the communication sent by Longsha Jendi for a full hour. It was not until an hour later that Fleeting Wooden Fish let out a long sigh and said to himself, "Ancestor, everything is going according to your plan, but where will your plan lead the world? Why did you arrange this plan in the hands of an outsider? Don't tell me that you look down on us, your descendant. Grandpa, why are you looking for me?" When Fleeting Wooden Fish muttered to himself, Liuyan Ling's voice sounded at the right time. After a while, Liuyan Ling appeared in front of Fleeting Wooden Fish. Since leaving Shanghai Pass early, Liuyan Ling had rarely returned home. She had been wandering outside, constantly fighting with Yuan Ku. It was said that no less than 10,000 Yuan Ku had died in her hands, and there were even 3 U-level Yuan Ku among them. It must be known that Liuyan Ling was only at the spirit sword level at that time. "Come. Let Grandpa hug you. Grandpa hasn't hugged you for a long time." Fleeting Wooden Fish opened his arms to Liuyan Ling. Of course, Liuyan Ling could not resist her own relatives, so she obediently sat in Fleeting Wooden Fish's arms and felt the smell of her grandpa's decay. It was a smell unique to people who were about to die. "You have suffered these days. Grandpa has let you down," Fleeting Wooden Fish said faintly. "The path was chosen by Ling herself. It has nothing to do with Grandpa. Ling will not blame Grandpa," Liuyan Ling said, feeling touched. "In the end, it was Grandpa who harmed you. In the end, it was the blood in your body that harmed you. If it wasn't for Grandpa's blood flowing in your body, you would be able to pursue your love with peace of mind instead of torturing yourself like this." Fleeting Wooden Fish's tone was filled with love and pity. It was a feeling that only a grandfather would have. "Don't worry, Grandpa. If Ling had a choice, then Ling would definitely be born here and become Grandpa's granddaughter," Liuyan Ling said sincerely. "Good girl, then Grandpa will be at ease." Fleeting Wooden Fish nodded, and took out an invitation card from his waist. He placed it in Fleeting Ling's hands. "I'm old, and I can't walk anymore. I'm also not interested in exploring the ocean. You can go on my behalf." Fleeting Ling took the invitation card and took a look at it. He sucked in a breath of cold air and stood up in disbelief. He looked at his grandfather, who was getting older and older, and asked, "Grandfather, is this really possible? Aren't you afraid?" "What's there to be afraid of?" Fleeting Wooden Fish smiled, but it looked like a cracked piece of dead wood. "This is your problem, not Grandpa's. Grandpa will pass away sooner or later, and you have to face everything on your own. Let me tell you. From today onwards, Grandpa will give you true freedom. No matter what you do, Grandpa will not interfere with you. Grandpa will not stop you. Even if you marry him, Grandpa will give you his blessings with a smile," Fleeting Wooden Fish said with some difficulty. "Grandpa, it's too late. It's all too late." Liuyan Ling could no longer hold back her tears. She hugged her grandfather and wailed. Chapter 1249. At dawn the next day, as the matter continued to ferment, countless news media gathered in the hotel where Guhan was temporarily staying. After arguing for a few hours, the hotel management ran out and announced to the media that Sir Guhan had left the hotel and was nowhere to be found. In the next 2 days, Guhan never appeared again, which aroused the curiosity of the audience. The more they didn't know the secret inside, the more curious the audience was. In addition to wanting to know the secret of Guhan,
The audience was more curious about what the legendary Emperor Sea Palace looked like and where it was located. The internet was also debating about this, but one thing was certain. The Emperor Sea Palace must be located in the depths of the sea. However, the netizens had different opinions on how to get to the Emperor Sea Palace. After all, there were many ordinary people who received the invitation. They didn't have the ability to resist the water in the sea. In the end, all the expectations exploded on January 4th. According to the news released by Yuzhong City's official website last night, all the guests who received the invitation only needed to wait at the gate of the base city at 8 a.m. on this day, and they could be sent to the Emperor Sea Palace by the welcoming team sent by Neptune. As a result, guests began to wait at the gate of the base city in the early hours of the morning. Of course, ordinary guests wouldn't have the mood to wait at the gate of the cold and windy city in the early hours of the morning. At this time, only those dedicated media workers would be waiting at the gate of the city. They took out their cameras early and started the live broadcast from midnight. Unexpectedly, even if the live broadcast started at midnight, the ratings in reality and on the internet reached 10%. This meant that 1 out of every 10 people watching TV would accompany the staff of the TV station to wait for the arrival of 8 a.m. in boredom. When the sun rose the next day, it was around 7 a.m. At this time, in addition to the staff of the news media, other guests who received the invitation also appeared at the gate of the city. Dear audience friends, I am now at the gate of Yuzhong City. It is already 7 a.m. now, and there is only an hour left before 8 a.m. Everyone, look, we have finally waited for the first guest to come here. Oh, isn't this the chairman of our Yuzhong City Council, Mr. Wang Debao? Let's go interview him now. The host quickly greeted the chairman of the council. It wasn't that the host was fawning on the rich and powerful, it was just that the host was too pitiful. He had been talking to himself at the gate for 7 hours. If he didn't find someone to interview, he would probably go crazy. Mr. Wang Debao certainly wouldn't miss this excellent opportunity. In fact, he found that if he was the first to arrive at the gate, he could win a lot of time for an exclusive interview. It should be known that the live broadcast of the whole base city was now, and 20% of the city's people were watching this live broadcast. If he could show his face for an exclusive interview for more than 10 minutes, his position as the next chairman of the council would be secured. Chairman Wang Debao's idea was very good, but unfortunately, he wasn't the only one who had the same idea. Soon, other celebrities in Yuzhong City also appeared, and then some sword-bearers, such as Ku Rokin, the son of the former chairman of the sword committee, Ku Wudao. The host heard that Ku Rokin and Guhan were good friends, so he rushed to interview them excitedly. Unfortunately, he was stared at by Ku Rokin. After 2 to 3 years, Ku Rokin had lost a lot of his Chinibya syndrome, but he had become more aloof and indifferent. Ku Rokin didn't know when it was the last time he smiled. There weren't many famous sword-bearers in Yuzhong City who received invitations. Only sword-bearers like Ku Rokin and Song Hammer, who were friends with Guhan. The rest were basically spirit sword-bearers. The host became very busy during this hour, constantly interviewing the various sword-bearers. Suddenly, the host's eyes swept across the crowd and discovered that 4 nervous men and women had also joined the waiting queue. This instantly made the host very curious. After all, those who could receive the Ji Yuhan invitation were all celebrities and top sword-bearers in Yuzhong City. As one of the top hosts in Yuzhong City, he could call out all of these people's names in an instant. However, the host didn't know any of the 4 men and women in front of him. They had never appeared in any TV news before, so they obviously couldn't be celebrities and top sword-bearers in Yuzhong City. More importantly, although the clothes of these 4 people were very neat and tidy, and they seemed to be trying to be as high-end and classy as possible, in the eyes of a top fashionista like the host, the clothes of these 4 people were too terrible. But in the eyes of a top fashionista like the host, the clothes these 4 people were wearing were too terrible. Not to mention fashionable, they were simply rustic. Especially the woman who looked the oldest, who was actually wearing a maid outfit. Although the host admitted that the maid outfit on this woman was extremely sexy and beautiful, the problem was, who would wear a maid outfit to a banquet? Did she think they were cosplaying? There was also the young girl next to the maid outfit. She looked 70 to 80% similar to the maid, so they were obviously mother and daughter. The young girl was indeed wearing a very beautiful and classy dress. But the host could tell at a glance that this was a dress from the famous fashion brand Huawei 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it might have been the latest trend, but today, it was an antique. This young lady probably bought it at a low price from some Taobao shop. There was also another woman standing next to the young girl. Although this woman was also dressed very neatly and seemed to be a mixed-race beauty, she had a silly smile on her face and drooled from time to time. One look and one could tell that she was a person with a low IQ, or in short, a mentally retarded person. The last one was the only male among the four. He was also the only one that the presenter recognized. The presenter clearly remembered that about 10 days ago, he had interviewed a violent incident that had spread throughout Yuzhong City. As an ordinary person, this youngster had single-handedly charged into the Xia family of the Emperor Sword aristocratic family and used his fists to severely injure hundreds of Xia family members. In the end, the swordsman of the Xia family had no choice but to subdue this youngster and directly send him to the Public Security Bureau. At that time, Shi Jueyuan had died, Jiyu Xian Yuan was wanted, and Yuzhong City had just escaped from the danger of a great invasion. The entire Yuzhong City could be said to be extremely concerned about the Xia family. After this host received the news, he immediately rushed to the Public Security Bureau, wanting to interview this youth. In the end, he had just met him, and before he could even ask a few questions, this youth was taken away by the Commission for Discipline Inspection who had rushed over. At that time, the host thought that this youth would most likely be in the Commission for Discipline Inspection for a year or two. But now, he actually appeared directly at the city gates, and with an unruly expression, as if he didn't care about anyone. Why would such a person appear at such an important occasion? Could it be that they don't have an invitation, and snuck in to fish in troubled waters? The host secretly thought for a moment, and in his mind, a big piece of news brewed. If he could expose these four people on the spot, then the viewership ratings and topics would definitely increase greatly, and his position in the company would also skyrocket. Let's go interview those four people, the host said to the camera, and excitedly walked to the side of the four people, not giving them a chance to escape, and directly placed the microphone in the hands of the beautiful, mature woman wearing a maid costume. Hello, madam. May I ask if you are here to participate in the Sea Emperor's Ascension ceremony? The host asked excitedly. Oui. Before the mature woman could speak, her daughter's eyes lit up, and she rushed to answer, that's right. We are here to participate in Lord Guhan's Ascension ceremony. Me. If you said you were here to watch the show, I wouldn't have said much. Since you admit that you are here to participate in the Ascension ceremony, then don't blame me for exposing your true colors. The host sneered in his heart, and began to imagine the scene of him exposing the other party, and then the viewership ratings and topics would rise. So that's how it is. A sweet smile appeared on the host's face. I wonder if you can introduce yourselves to the audience in front of the TV. I think it's better. We don't. The mature woman was obviously a little guilty, and she didn't want to answer the host's question, but the woman refused to let it go. Instead, she grabbed the microphone and said excitedly, My name is Long Xiaoya. Next to me is my mother, Wen Maiyun. This is our aunt, Liu Anna. This little radish is called Lu Yin. Don't call me little radish. When Lu Yin heard this, he immediately raised his fist and said angrily to Long Xiaoya. Sure enough, you are a little gangster with a violent gene. The host glanced at Lu Yin disdainfully, but Lu Yin gave him a very angry look. Oh, it's Miss Long Xiaoya. The host's smile became even sweeter. Then, Miss Long Xiaoya, what do you do? Can you tell us the audience in front of the TV? I'm still a student. Long Xiaoya blinked and said, My mother is just like what she's wearing. She's a maid. Anna broke her head when she was a child, so she has been living with us and has no job. As for this little radish, he was originally a student like me, but he was expelled from school a while ago, and now he is also unemployed. F***ck. No way, F***ck. How can this kind of person get an invitation? F***ck. There's no need to think about it. These four people just want to sneak in, After hearing Long Xiaoya's introduction, the audience watching the live broadcast on TV and the internet immediately went into an uproar. They all said that these 4 people were shameless people who wanted to fish in troubled waters. Then, these audience members thought about how they could not get an invitation from Guhan even though they were so outstanding. A surge of anger surged in their hearts, and they began to curse and throw all kinds of rude words at these 4 people. Indeed, just as the host had hoped, the entire television program's ratings began to rise. Xiaoya, let's go quickly, don't talk to them anymore. When Maiyun seemed to be able to smell a trace of a strange atmosphere in front of the camera, so she pulled Long Xiaoya's arm hard and prepared to take them away from the camera. When Maiyun's action also confirmed the host's guess. These 4 people must be liars. The host was very sure in her heart. At this time, there was no way she would let Wen Maiyun and the others leave. Instead, she gestured to the few cameramen behind her, and these cameramen immediately occupied the advantageous positions around Wen Maiyun, surrounding her 4 people. What do you want? Do you want to fight? Lu Yin waved his fist and roared angrily at the surrounding cameramen. At this time, Wen Maiyun and the others had also successfully attracted the attention of the surrounding guests. They all looked at this interesting scene with interest, and then muttered in private, people nowadays are getting more and more shameless. They actually have the nerve to fish in troubled waters in such an occasion. We don't want to accept your interview anymore. We're leaving. Wen Maiyun threw the microphone in her hand back to the host and was about to leave with her people. Wait. The host finally revealed his true intentions. At the same time, 3 cameras pointed at Wen Maiyun and the others from 3 angles. The host asked loudly, these are the people who are going to High Emperor Palace to participate in the coronation ceremony. People without an invitation are not allowed here. Please show me your invitation. We don't have an invitation. Drops of sweat dripped down Wen Maiyun's forehead. As I expected. Since you don't have an invitation, please leave here. Otherwise, when the car that will pick us up arrives, you will look very ugly and embarrass Yuzhang City. The host shouted loudly, Neptune is from Yuzhang City. He is also the pride of Yuzhang City. As Neptune's compatriots, it's fine if we don't bring honor to Neptune, but how can we embarrass Neptune? Okay. The host's words attracted the attention of the surrounding audience, and it also attracted the attention of Song Hammer, who was chatting with Ku Rockin. Song Hammer was about to turn his head to see what was happening over there, but Ku Rockin pulled him back. Don't worry about those boring things, Ku Rockin said calmly. Song Hammer could only shrug and give up the idea of watching. It's not that we don't have an invitation. We actually have an invitation. Wen Maiyun was flustered, and her words were illogical. Interesting. One moment you say you have an invitation, and the next moment you say you don't have one. If you have an invitation, please take it out now, the host forced. We don't have a paper invitation. It's online. It was sent to our personal terminal by Neptune. We don't have a paper invitation, Wen Maiyun stammered. Oh, according to what you said, you know His Majesty the Sea King, and are friends of His Majesty the Sea King? The host said disdainfully, don't joke around. How could His Majesty the Sea King have friends like you? We really are. Wen Maiyun was about to reveal her identity, but she was pulled back by Long Xiaoya. Long Xiaoya's face also turned purple from anger, but it was precisely because of this that Long Xiaoya told Wen Maiyun and Lu Yin not to reveal their identity. She just kept arguing with the host, telling the host that they were friends of His Majesty the Sea King. Long Xiaoya's actions made the MC even more certain of his judgment. After realizing that he was unable to get Wen Maiyun and the rest to leave with just a few words, the MC made a call to the police who were on duty nearby, preparing to use the police force to chase these 4 people out. At this time, a dragon's roar suddenly came from the sky. It's coming. The host no longer had the time to deal with these 4 people. All the cameras were pointed at the sky at the same time, and they could clearly see a dragon carriage pulled by 8 golden dragons slowly descending from the sky. Finally, it landed steadily at the entrance of Yuzhang City. Chapter 1250. My dear audience members, what we've been waiting for has finally happened. What we're seeing now is a dragon carriage pulled by 8 true dragons. The host explained excitedly. Everyone, look at the appearance of these 8 true dragons. Each of them is more than 10 kilometers long and has 4 golden dragon claws. This means that these 8 true dragons are all 4-clawed golden dragons of the True Dragon clan. The host became more and more excited. Dear viewers, perhaps you don't know what a 4-clawed golden dragon means, so let me tell you. This 4-clawed golden dragon is second only to the dragon kings of the 4 seas and the 5-clawed golden dragon in the True Dragon clan. At the very least, it is equivalent to the nether rank Yuan Ku, which is our spirit sword rank sword holder. According to statistics, there are no more than 200 4-clawed golden dragons in the entire dragon clan, and each of them is the mainstay of the True Dragon clan. Now that the dragon kings of the 4 seas are using such dragons to pull the carriage, it means that our Guhan has truly become the Sea King. Otherwise, he would never be so extravagant as to use a 4-clawed golden dragon to pull the carriage. Now, this dragon chariot proves that all those who doubted His Majesty on the internet are wrong. Everything is true. It's all true. The host was so excited that he was about to cry, but he didn't know if this excitement was real or just an act. When the dragon carriage pulled by 8 true dragons stopped on the ground, a girl wearing a traditional Huaxia Hanfu walked down from the dragon carriage. Oh my God! Isn't that the disciple of His Majesty the Sea King, Master Lu Shihua of the Sword Pavilion? The host recognized the identity of this girl at a glance. She was Yuzhang City's Sword Pavilion's Master Lu Shihua. This time, she completely ignored Wen Maiyun and the others. She ran all the way with her cameraman and was the first to rush to Lu Shihua's side. She excitedly extended the microphone in her hand, ready to interview this legendary figure of Yuzhang City. Hello, Miss Lu Shihua. I am the host of Yuzhang City's official television station. May I ask if you can accept our interview? The host almost put the microphone in Lu Shihua's mouth. Miss Shihua, you're finally back. I was scared to death. Before Lu Shihua had a chance to say anything, a spatial gate opened beside him. Sword Immortal Ling Shu walked out from the spatial gate with an awkward expression on his face. Previously, Sword Immortal Ling Shu hadn't appeared at the city gates, and the host had thought that Sword Immortal Ling Shu didn't want to come. However, as soon as Lu Shihua appeared, Sword Immortal Ling Shu immediately rushed over through the void gate. It appeared that Sword Immortal Ling Shu had arrived near the city gates a long time ago. He had only been observing from the shadows, waiting for Lu Shihua to appear. Many thanks for Senior Ling Shu's concern. Shihua is doing well. Lu Shihua saluted Sword Immortal Ling Shu, and the two of them immediately began chatting. Our host didn't have the guts to interject at a time like this, so he could only try his best to get as close to Lu Shihua and Sword Immortal Ling Shu as possible, hoping to get the closest camera shot. Shihua, what do you think is going on? How did Guhan suddenly become the Sea Emperor? Oh right, there's also Master Jiyu Shenyuan. Will she also be attending her younger brother's ascension ceremony? Sword Immortal Ling Shu asked with a grin. Master Ling Shu, I really can't answer that. However, when we arrive at the Sea Emperor Palace, you can ask my master yourself. Lu Shihua replied in a manner that was neither haughty nor humble. All right. This Master Guhan has always been a name that I've only heard of, but never seen. Today, I'll be able to meet him in person. I'll also be able to see just how talented the future leader of Yuzhang City is. Sword Immortal Ling Shu laughed heartily. Master Ling Shu, my apologies, but I have a few words to say to all the guests present. Lu Shihua said to Sword Immortal Ling Shu. Of course, don't mind an old man like me. Master Shihua, feel free to speak. Sword Immortal Ling Shu politely took a step back, giving the stage to Lu Shihua. At the same time, the host immediately called for his cameras to shoot Lu Shihua's speech from all directions. Dear guests, thank you for attending my master's ascension ceremony. On behalf of my master, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to all of you. After saying this, Lu Shihua bowed to all the guests and immediately won a round of enthusiastic applause. Big sister. Lu Yin didn't say anything when he saw his big sister. However, tears flowed uncontrollably from his eyes. He almost thought that he would never see his big sister again. Strange, Miss Chihua seems to have changed into a different person. In the past, when she was at home, she always had a sad look on her face. I've never seen her smile before. But now, she looks like a flower, very delicate. Mom, why do you think Miss Chihua became like this? Long Xiaoya asked when Ma Yun with a hint of jealousy in her voice when she saw that Lu Chihua had become the center of attention. How would I know? Perhaps it's because she's with Master, and Master can share Miss Chihua's burden, so Miss Chihua is happy. When Mei Yun's words were very reliable. TCH. I don't think that's the case. Long Xiaoya shook her head. I'm guessing that something must have happened with our lecherous master these few days. He. Just look at her, you can tell that she must have been watered with a lot of milk recently. Look at how moisturized her skin is now. Look at us, mother and daughter, we haven't received master's love for 3 years. Our skin is as dry as a desert. It's nowhere near as delicate as when we were nourished by master 3 years ago. Shut up. How can you say something like that? When Ma Yun heard this, she glared at her daughter angrily. Only then did Long Xiaoya obediently shut her mouth. At this time, Lu Shihua continued, Master said that Yuzhang City is his home and also the most important place. No matter what, he must use the greatest courtesy to welcome everyone from his hometown. Originally, Master should have personally come to welcome everyone, but there are too many things to prepare in the Ocean Emperor Palace. Master can't find the time, so he can only ask me to welcome everyone. Everyone, please show your invitation to Prime Minister Turtle, then board the dragon carriage under the guidance of the dragon ladies. We will set off for the Ocean Emperor Palace in 20 minutes. After that, an elderly man in a suit with a tortoise shell on his back alighted from the dragon chariot. He was accompanied by 8 dragon ladies in bright red dragon dresses. Although Lu Shihua asked all the guests to go to Prime Minister Turtle's carriage, the guests still instinctively surrounded Lu Shihua. Everyone wanted to go up to him and say a few words. It was easy to imagine that if they could gain Lu Shihua's favor, it would be equivalent to gaining the favor of the Sea Emperor. In the future, the Sea Emperor would not only be the Sea Emperor, but also the new leader of Yuzhang City. If they could establish a good relationship with him now, it would definitely be beneficial in the future. It was hard to imagine that at this moment, these guests who were fighting to be the first to establish a good relationship with Lu Shihua were cursing Guhan as the scum of Yuzhang City just 5 days ago. And a month ago, they were still cooperating with Shi Jueyuan's orders and constantly scolding Lu Shihua, the pitiful sword pavilion master. Things in this world seemed so ridiculous. It was already very difficult for Lu Shihua to recite the long speech just now, and now she had to deal with these troublesome guests. Lu Shihua suddenly felt a headache coming on. But Lu Shihua was not good at refusing. Just when she didn't know how to deal with these troublesome guys, the scabbard at her waist suddenly vibrated. A light flashed, and a gust of wind rose out of thin air, directly blowing the surrounding guests away. F***CK? What are you doing? Killing people. The somewhat embarrassed guests struggled to get up from the ground. When they were about to curse the guy who pushed them to the ground, they suddenly showed a look of horror and shouted, Yuan Ku. Yuan Ku is here. Run away. Because at this moment, a female angel with 4 pairs of wings on her back appeared in front of these guests. In the minds of the guests, all angels with wings were Yuan Ku from heaven, Yuan Ku who killed without batting an eyelid. Everyone, don't panic. Be serious, this isn't some Yuan Ku, it's Master Lu Shihua's sword maiden, goddess 8-winged angel. Seeing that the scene was a little chaotic, Sword Immortal Ling Shu immediately stood up and shouted, calming the chaotic scene. So it's Master Lu Shihua's sword maiden, I was almost scared to death. The panic on the faces of the guests began to fade, and they murmured to themselves. Wait a minute. If I remember correctly, the 8-winged angel sword is a spiritual sword rank sword maiden. This means that Master Lu Shihua has already become a spirit sword tier sword wielder. Oh my god, a month ago, Master Lu Shihua was only an ancient sword tier sword wielder. Isn't this a little too fast? A guest exclaimed. What do you know? The reason Master Lu Shihua has remained at ancient sword maiden for the past 3 years is because the treasure sword 4-winged angel has gone missing. As long as the 4-winged angel is found, and there's enough sword essence, coupled with the mystical angel bloodline, it wouldn't be strange for Master Lu Shihua to ascend from an ancient sword maiden to an emperor sword maiden within a day, another guest said. Then according to what you're saying, as long as there's enough sword essence, Master Lu Shihua will definitely be able to ascend to the throne. This guest had a shocked expression on his face. That's right. The other guest nodded. Doesn't that mean that in the future, our Yuzhang city will have 2 emperor sword maidens at the same time, and they'll be master and disciple partners? The guest said subconsciously. In an instant, the 2 guests fell into a stunned silence at the same time. These 2 guests were not the only ones who had thought of this. The other guests had also thought of this. Previously, Lu Shihua had revealed that as long as he survived, he would be able to grow into an emperor sword wielder with the Angel series swords. However, Lu Shihua had been stuck at Ancient Sword Maiden for more than 3 years. In addition, the owners of the other angel swords in history had died halfway due to various reasons. They hadn't been able to reach the peak, so the people of Yuzhang City didn't think that their sword tower master was bound to become an emperor sword maiden. It wasn't until this moment, when Lu Shihua held the spirit sword maiden 8-winged angel sword and had a super expert like Guhan behind her, that the people of Yuzhang City truly felt for the first time that Lu Shihua was bound to become an emperor sword maiden. At this moment, Lu Shihua's meaning in everyone's eyes changed. She was no longer valued by the guests because she was Guhan's disciple. She was respected because she was a future emperor sword maiden. If it was possible, other than those sword maidens, the other guests would want to kneel at Lu Shihua's feet. As long as they could be valued by the future Jendi, it was not a big deal to sell their dignity. Hurry up and get in the car. 8-winged doesn't have a good temper. Don't go near her. Seeing the surrounding guests glaring at her, Lu Shihua was shocked and immediately said to the guests. At the same time, the 8-winged angel sword behind her flapped its wings cooperatively. When the guests saw this, they temporarily gave up the idea of fawning over Lu Shihua and helplessly prepared to get into the car. Lu Shihua excitedly scanned her surroundings. When she saw her little brother, Lu Yin, and the others, her face lit up with joy and she quickly walked towards them. Hurry up. Hurry up. The host immediately led the camera crew to follow behind Lu Shihua, intending to film Lu Shihua's every move. This was also a reporter's job, so although Lu Shihua, who was walking in front, was a little disgusted, he did not say anything to stop them. However, the host soon realized that something was wrong because Lu Shihua was walking toward the 4 people he had just questioned. This is bad. Audience friends. In a hurry, the host said directly into the microphone, the pavilion master must have found out that the 4 people came here to fish in troubled waters. If this matter spreads, our Yuzhang city will lose face. The host didn't seem to have thought that if she pointed the camera somewhere else, this incident would never spread out. Unfortunately, how could the host let go of such good news material? He followed closely behind Lu Shihua and watched the 2 groups walk together. However, the next development of the plot was completely unexpected by the host. Lu Shihua didn't drive away the 4 people who came to fish in troubled waters. Instead, she happily hugged the violent boy. Under the lens of the camera, the audience could even see a few drops of tears of excitement flowing down the corners of Lu Shihua's eyes. This instantly puzzled the host and the audience in front of the TV. What was going on? Could it be that this violent boy was Lu Shihua's lover? This was big news. But soon, the boy's words broke the audience's boring speculation. They heard Lu Yin say, "Sister, you're finally back. If you didn't come back, I would have gone to find you alone." Plop. The host almost fell to the ground. She never thought that this violent boy would actually be Lu Shihua's brother. Only then did the host vaguely realize that Lu Yin and Lu Shihua actually looked like each other. They were clearly a pair of biological brother and sister. Dear viewers, I really didn't know that the pavilion master had a brother. The host cried as he explained to the audience in front of the television. It was all Lu Shihua's fault for keeping a low profile. In addition, he had been suppressed by Shijua Yuan for the past 3 years, so Lu Shihua had never announced his family's situation to the public. Lu Yin had never appeared in front of the television either. Except for a very small number of people, no one in Yuzhang City knew that Lu Shihua had a brother. Wen Maiyun and Long Xiaoya were in a similar situation. Gu Han repeatedly ordered Wen Maiyun and Long Xiaoya to keep a low profile when he left. They tried to stay in the house and not go out, and they would not accept any interviews. This was because Gu Han was worried that someone would take advantage of his absence to do something bad to Wen Maiyun and Long Xiaoya. Wen Maiyun was very strict about this. Even Long Xiaoya, who had always liked to show off, was tightly controlled by Wen Maiyun. She did not dare to say anything outside. As a result, Gu Han's people in Yuzhang City became unknown to the news media. It was reasonable for the host, who claimed to be knowledgeable, to look down on others. Chapter 1251. Miss Shihua, hurry up and tell that snobbish woman what our identities are, and whether we are qualified to attend the master's coronation ceremony. After Lu Shihua and her brother finished speaking, Long Xiaoya jumped out impatiently and requested, "Xiaoya, stop fooling around, this is not something Miss Shihua should care about. Besides, we didn't do anything, just get in the car and leave." Wen Maiyun heard her daughter's words and immediately stopped Long Xiaoya. Wen Maiyun really did not want to cause any trouble for Gu Han. "No, Mom, it's not like you didn't see how arrogant that woman was just now. She looked down on us from the bottom of her heart. She was so hateful." Long Xiaoya insisted. "All right, I will handle this matter." Lu Shihua patted Long Xiaoya on the shoulder and walked to the side of the host. With a smile on his face, he asked, "Are you reporters from Yuzhang City's official TV station?" "Yes, we are," the host hurriedly said. Her forehead was full of sweat, and most of her beautiful makeup was ruined. "It's okay, don't be nervous. It's just my master's family playing a joke on you. Don't take it to heart, everyone, just focus on your work." Lu Shihua smiled gently, and the host felt as if she had seen an angel, and the nervousness in her heart was greatly reduced. She sincerely bowed to Lu Shihua and took the film crew to interview other guests. Seeing Lu Shihua's way of handling things, Long Xiaoya said with some dissatisfaction, "What? How can you let them go like this? At least scold them. Xiaoya, you also have to think about Master. This is a live TV broadcast, and every word we say will affect Master's image in the hearts of the citizens. Do you understand?" After 3 years of training as the Sword Pavilion's pavilion master, Lu Shihua had become very tactful and experienced in dealing with people. With just one sentence, Long Xiaoya lost all her arrogance and could only lower her head. Moreover, Long Xiaoya was not qualified to talk back to Lu Shihua. Although Long Xiaoya was Gu Han's woman and could be considered Lu Shihua's mistress, Lu Shihua was a future emperor sword wielder. Moreover, he was loyal to Gu Han. In Gu Han's eyes, Lu Shihua was definitely many times more important than Long Xiaoya. Long Xiaoya did not have any courage in front of Lu Shihua. "Let's go. Don't let Master wait too long. Last night, Master told me that he hasn't seen you for more than 3 years. He really misses you," Lu Shihua said as he patted Long Xiaoya's head. "Really? Is Master really thinking about us?" When Long Xiaoya heard that, her eyes turned into moons. She held her mother's hand and said, "Mom, did you hear that? I said that Master won't forget us. He still misses us." "Yes." When Maiyun nodded her head vigorously, her face was also filled with a happy smile. "Sigh. Am I lying?" Seeing Wen Maiyun and her mother's happy faces, Lu Shihua felt a little guilty. From the beginning to the end, Gu Han had not told Lu Shihua that he missed Wen Maiyun and her mother. Otherwise, Gu Han would not have returned home when he returned to Yuzhang City. This was just Lu Shihua saying it on behalf of Gu Han. Now, it seemed that the effect was quite good. The truth was just as Lu Shihua said. When Lu Shihua said those words to the camera gently, Lu Shihua's favorability instantly rose in the hearts of the audience in front of the television. Even Gu Han's favorability rose slowly. It could be imagined that if Lu Shihua pretended to the camera and then scolded the host, it was estimated that Gu Han and Lu Shihua would have a lot of anti-fans. After all, in any era, one anti-fan was equivalent to 10 fans. Soon, all the guests boarded the dragon carriage. The 8 dragons let out a majestic dragon roar. In the blink of an eye, the entire dragon carriage disappeared into the sky. My dear audience members, because of the signal problem, we can only temporarily cut off the 4320p live broadcast quality and switch to 720p for the live broadcast. However, we just learned from Miss Lu Shihua that a quantum network transfer station has been prepared in the Sea Emperor Palace. After entering the Sea Emperor Palace, we can bring you the 4320p high-definition picture again. Even in the dragon carriage, the host did not stop for a moment and began to explain endlessly. Looking out of the window through our camera lens, you can see a sea of clouds. This is not a virtual image of the sea of clouds that we synthesized with computer technology, or a virtual image of the sea of clouds taken in the virtual world, but a real image of the sea of clouds from Earth. Ever since the dimensional force of the Great Destruction sealed off the sky, except for sword-bearers of spirit sword level and above, human technology is no longer able to soar in the sky. Therefore, we can't see the natural sea of clouds on TV programs. Only on this dragon carriage that relies on 8 dragons to pull the carriage can we bring the most real and natural sea of clouds to the audience. The host's words were filled with emotion, and at the same time, there were tears in his eyes. The host never thought that he would be able to see the real sea of clouds in his lifetime. Many readers might feel very strange. Since human technology had developed to the level of maglev flying cars, why had the black technology related to the sky completely stopped? Not only were there no black technology aircraft, but even the aircraft before the apocalypse seemed to have disappeared. This seemed to be a very strange thing. Of course, it wasn't that humans didn't have black technology in the aspect of aircraft. For example, the Star Shuttle in Shanghai Pass was a top aircraft. It was just that outside Shanghai Pass, using an aircraft was a very dangerous thing. Except for the spirit sword level swordbearers, ordinary swordbearers didn't have the ability to fight in the air. Once they encountered the attack of the flying Yuan Ku, the fragile aircraft would be the graveyard of all the passengers. In addition to this factor, the more important point was that the sky had become extremely unstable because of the dimensional force. Looking over, the sky might be very calm, no different from the normal sky. But if one flew above 500 meters in the air, they would find that the air was extremely thin, and the oxygen content was reduced to less than 5%, which was simply unable to meet the oxygen needed by the aircraft's engine. At the same time, there would be some abnormal dimensional fluctuations in the sky from time to time, and each fluctuation would cause the sky to become chaotic. For any aircraft, this was an extremely fatal point. After experiencing countless bloody lessons, humans simply banned any man-made aircraft from taking off, which was equivalent to directly giving up the sky. As for Shanghai Pass, because of Yuan Ku in the Ju Tian Star battle formation, the sky in Shanghai Pass was very calm. Not only was there enough oxygen, but there would also be no chaotic void, which gave the space for aircraft such as the Star Shuttle. Only those sword-bearers and Yuan Ku with powerful strength could discover danger in the dangerous sky in advance. Even if they couldn't avoid the danger, they could rely on their own strength to resist it. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe you can also feel it through the camera. Now the dragon car is descending rapidly, and the sea of clouds is constantly flying away from above us. It seems that we are in a state of rapid descent. Look, it's the sea. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the real sea. Through the window of the dragon car, the host saw a pure and flawless blue sea, and suddenly jumped up and down like a child. The cameraman's camera was also very naughty towards the lively host. Through the camera, the audience also saw an image that was completely different from the usual dignified and generous host. However, this was actually the true reflection of every citizen living in Yuzhong City. Yuzhong City was not like London City, or rather, there was no other base city in the world like London City, which was built by the sea, so the citizens of London City could very safely enjoy the magnificence of the sea. Except for the citizens of London City, almost all of them had never seen the real sea in their lives. At most, they could experience it through the virtual world. Therefore, when they saw the real sea with their own eyes, they couldn't control their excitement and cried out wildly. In fact, it was not only the host who reacted like this. The big shots who usually put on airs and wore cold faces and were extremely serious were no different from the reaction of the host. The moment they saw the real sea, Their reactions were no different from the host's. They all became as cute and lively as children, pointing excitedly at the sea outside the window. For them, who were not sword-bearers, being able to see the real sea with their own eyes was already a worthwhile trip. If she could, the host would like to stay on the sea for a few hours and take a good look at the sea. Unfortunately, she only had less than 3 seconds to really see the sea. After 3 seconds, the dragon car rushed directly into the sea. Ah! All the passengers screamed in unison, and then the dragon car rushed directly into the sea. In the blink of an eye, the world outside the window turned into a white world of light, and then into a blue underwater world. But this was just a flash of color. The dragon car soon entered the deep sea, and everything outside the window was replaced by a dark color. The bottom of the sea was not as bright as the outside world as depicted in cartoons such as SpongeBob SquarePants. In fact, as long as the bottom of the sea was more than 10 meters deep, it was difficult for sunlight to shine in. Instead, it was replaced by darkness. This was the real bottom of the sea. But soon, countless rays of light illuminated the world outside the dragon car. Through the window, the guests could see a circle of golden light enveloping the entire dragon car. At the same time, this light also illuminated the surrounding underwater world. This is a water-repellent circle made by the True Dragon Clan's water-repellent technique. It can isolate the sea around the dragon car and ensure that the dragon car will not be submerged by the sea, Lu Shihua explained to all the guests. Then, Master, does the True Dragon Clan also use the oxygen-making technique to produce oxygen? The host seized the opportunity to ask Lu Shihua. The space of this dragon car is not large. If it is a long trip, oxygen is definitely not needed. This. Lu Shihua smiled awkwardly, then pulled out a box-sized thing from under his seat. Oxygen is made from this. Oh. The host immediately ordered the camera to take a close-up of this box, and then asked excitedly and curiously, is this the legendary magic treasure of the Dragon Clan? Humph. Without waiting for Lu Shihua to answer, Long Xiaoya snorted disdainfully and said in a strange tone, look carefully, this is the Yongchang oxygen machine I bought in the department store in Yuzhang City yesterday. It is also this year's new model. If you discount it, it is less than 6,000 yuan. After listening to Long Xiaoya's words, the host wanted to find a hole to hide in. However, with the end of this episode, the speed of the dragon car began to slow down. At the same time, the host found that there was suddenly a light coming from the distant seabed. This light was getting brighter and brighter, and finally, a luxurious sea palace appeared in the eyes of the host. Distinguished guests, we have arrived at the Sea Emperor Palace. Everyone can get off the car. Lu Shihua breathed a sigh of relief and began to arrange the guests to get off the car. When the host stepped down from the dragon car, he couldn't help but be stunned by the scene in front of him. Just like the dimensional wall system in Yuzhang City, a large light curtain covered the entire Sea Emperor Palace. Outside and inside the light curtain were two completely different worlds. The world outside the light curtain was endless seawater and countless kinds of fish. The world inside the light curtain was like the ground, full of air with a faint smell of seafood. At the top of the light curtain, it was unknown how many luminous pearls were lined up. If any of these luminous pearls were taken out and sold in Yuzhang City, it was estimated that they could sell for more than millions of yuan. It was also these countless and valuable luminous pearls that brought the entire Sea Emperor Palace light like the sun. The most surprising thing on the light curtain was this Sea Emperor Palace. The host thought that this Sea Emperor Palace would be a luxurious human building, or an ancient-style palace, or a castle-style British building. But what the host never expected was that this Sea Emperor Palace was actually transformed from a large warship. Through the faint ship number, the words Jiangxi could be vaguely seen. What is this? Because the host had lost control of the ocean, although he could recognize that it was a large warship in front of him, he didn't know what kind of warship it was and what it was used for. This is an aircraft carrier from before the apocalypse. Suddenly, a somewhat emotional voice sounded in the host's ear. The host turned his head and saw a beautiful woman wearing a samurai outfit with a sword on her waist and a gourd hairpin on her head. Lady Yi Tian, the host screamed in panic. Before she set off, She had memorized all kinds of information related to Guhan, including all of Guhan's sword maidens. Yi Tian hurriedly covered the host's mouth. It wasn't easy for me to escape for a breather. Don't call Chidian over, Yi Tian said nervously. Chidian? What Chidian? The host was a little confused. She had never heard of this name before. Let's talk about this aircraft carrier. Yi Tian hurriedly changed the topic. This was humanity's most powerful aircraft carrier from before the apocalypse. It had 2 nuclear reactors and could reach a top speed of 50 knots. It was a super aircraft carrier that could carry more than 500 fighter jets and more than 1,000 nuclear warheads at the same time. It's a pity that it was destroyed in the apocalypse in less than 2 years of service, Yi Tian said with a sigh. Chapter 1252. Yes, the sea palace that Guhan had chosen was not a proper building, but an aircraft carrier that had sunk at the bottom of the sea. Of course, it was impossible to build a sea palace in 3 days, but out of some considerations, Guhan requested that the Sea Emperor's coronation ceremony be held as soon as possible. Therefore, he asked the 4 Sea Dragon Kings to find one of the ready-made palaces at the bottom of the sea to serve as his sea palace. The 4 Sea Dragon Kings expressed on the spot that they were willing to offer their 4 Sea Dragon palaces to Guhan as the Sea Palace. Regardless of whether the Sea Dragon King's words were sincere or not, it was impossible for Guhan to occupy the house that others had lived in for 1,000 years. This was not only against the rules, but it would also inevitably create a gap with the 4 Sea Dragon Kings. Therefore, Guhan decisively rejected the good intentions of the 4 Sea Dragon Kings and asked them to give him the other undersea buildings to choose from. Therefore, the 4 Sea Dragon Kings spent a day to count the undersea buildings, and then all of them were gathered into Guhan's hands. As a result, Jiyu Han was extremely dissatisfied with these buildings. To put it bluntly, dragons were still a type of animal. Their buildings at the bottom of the sea were either sand caves, or large conches and seashells. There was even a building made of a turtle shell that had its flesh hollowed out. No matter which one it was, it could not satisfy Jiyu Han's needs. As for the buildings that were built according to the standards of humans, most of them were used by the true dragons themselves. If Jiyu Han were to rob them of their houses, hundreds of true dragons would become homeless. Jiyu Han did not want to do such a hurtful thing. Just as Guhan felt a little disappointed and was about to think of another way, he discovered the sunken aircraft carrier. Speaking of which, this aircraft carrier had some connections with Guhan, because this aircraft carrier was made by Little 28. This little dragon had always been restless. After discovering the sunken aircraft carrier, he had a sudden idea to transform the aircraft carrier into a palace. Out of love for his son, the West Sea Dragon King did not hesitate to order his subordinate to start transforming the aircraft carrier. At the same time, he also bought a lot of items from the human world to decorate the aircraft carrier. Finally, he forcibly transformed the battleship into a palace. Although it still looked like a battleship from the outside, in fact, it had been completely transformed inside. It had a huge palace and more than 60 rooms, as well as a kitchen, entertainment room, and other buildings. Seeing this aircraft carrier, Guhan immediately fell in love with it. Moreover, this aircraft carrier was the Jiangxi, which had a deep relationship with Yuzhang City. Guhan immediately decided to make this aircraft carrier the new Sea Emperor Palace. Guhan might be a little embarrassed to give the houses of other dragons, but since it was the palace of the good-for-nothing dragon, Guhan politely declined. With a wave of his pen, the battleship became Guhan's. Regarding this, the good-for-nothing dragon could only shed tears and say that he was very happy to give it to the Sea Emperor. Thanks to the luxury and enjoyment of this good-for-nothing dragon, the degree of transformation of the aircraft carrier itself was already very high. In the remaining 2 days, Guhan mainly let the people of the Dragon Clan make some adjustments to the details. He also conveniently got a top water bead to prop up a water curtain. He also bought a lot of air generators, which could be considered to have met the air requirements of the Sea Emperor Palace. In the future, Guhan also planned to go to Yangjing City to buy a small dimensional wall system. This way, he wouldn't have to worry about Yuan Ku attacking his Sea Emperor Palace. In fact, even if it was attacked, It wouldn't be a big deal. Guhan didn't really intend to use the Sea Emperor Palace as his stronghold, and it was impossible for him to store any precious things in the Sea Emperor Palace. The most powerful battleship in the world before the Great Calamity, the super overlord of the sea, and the existence known as the strongest military machine of mankind, had now become a palace. People couldn't help but admit that the things in this world were really a joke. If you didn't see it with your own eyes, you would never believe that some things existed. Yi Tian properly introduced the origin of the entire Sea Emperor Palace to the host. The audience in front of the television was also intoxicated. This was a benefit that only Yuzhang City enjoyed. The media workers of other cities didn't have Heavenly Sword to explain for them. Therefore, when they saw the Sea Emperor Palace built from an aircraft carrier with their own eyes, they could only foolishly stand there, unable to say a word. After Yi Tian finished his introduction, the host originally planned to take advantage of this rare opportunity to properly interview Heavenly Sword. However, before Yi Tian could finish speaking, he saw a woman dressed in traditional Chinese Han clothing, who looked like a noble empress, fly out of the Sea Emperor Palace with a huff. Behind her were 18 gorgeously dressed dragon ladies. Yi Tian, what are you doing? It's your turn to change clothes. The moment this noble beauty appeared, she directly questioned Yi Tian. I don't want to. I'm not like you, wearing clothes that suffocate people to death. Yi Tian retreated a dozen steps in fear. He looked at the beauty vigilantly and said, My little sister Qijian, my lady Qijian, please let me off. The few of you are enough for the ascension ceremony. I'll be satisfied if I just drink in the hall. Don't drag me up there to suffer. Is this the Qijian that Lady Yi Tian mentioned? The host was taken aback, and the cameraman had already aimed the camera at the elegant beauty named Qijian. Ladies and gentlemen, who is this lady that has suddenly appeared in front of us? Why does it seem like even Yuzhang City's pride, Lady Yi Tian, is afraid of her? Who exactly is she? Could she be the Lord Sea Emperor's human wife? The host asked nervously. Her answer could be said to be completely correct, but it could also be said to be completely wrong. Why are you guys here? At this moment, Qijian finally noticed the presence of the host and the others. Her previously angry and distorted face instantly became incomparably calm. Her entire body emitted a noble aura. Even the host who thought that she was beautiful couldn't help but feel ashamed of her inferiority. Qijian, you better pay attention to your image, otherwise, everything will be broadcasted live. Yi Tian also noticed the change in Qijian's mood. She instantly seemed to have grasped Qijian's weakness and said proudly, That's fine too. Qijian's face still had a faint elegant smile. If I can't call you, then I'll ask Juexian to call you. What do you think? Yi Tian's expression instantly stiffened. This child was not afraid of anything. She was just a little scared when she met Juexian. Of course, there was an interesting story here. However, there was limited space, so she didn't want to waste time here. Sigh. I'm so unlucky. Yi Tian smiled bitterly. She could only obediently follow Qijian back into the Sea Emperor Palace, leaving behind the dumbstruck host and the others. They couldn't understand why the famous #1 sword mistress of the sword grade would actually be so obedient to a human. It really didn't make sense. Following the broadcast of the live broadcast, there was also a burst of discussion on the internet. They were discussing the identity of this lady called Qijian. For a moment, the debate on the internet became very intense. However, no one could guess Qijian's true identity. After all, the famous sword mistress that Guhan announced to the public was the Juzi sword. The dragon carriage from Yuzhang City was considered to have arrived early. The host who had been outside the Sea Emperor Palace all this while captured the scene of the 5 dragon carriages entering the Sea Emperor Palace. As the dragon carriage from Moscow City, which was the furthest away, entered the Sea Emperor Palace, the Sea Emperor Palace suddenly emitted a loud whistle. At the same time, a pleasant female voice was heard. Dear guests, please enter the Sea Emperor Palace as soon as possible. The coronation ceremony will begin immediately. The people who were still outside did not delay and entered the Sea Emperor Palace through the entrance that was opened at the bow of the ship. If seen from the outside, the Sea Emperor Palace was a very pure aircraft carrier. After entering the Sea Emperor Palace, it became a very pure palace. All the decorations inside were arranged according to the world's top hotels. The ground was covered with soft wool carpets, and the surrounding walls were covered with marble tiles. There was no trace of the steel temperament that a warship should have. After passing through a long passage, the host and others finally entered the main hall of the Sea Emperor Palace, a super palace with a length of more than 700 meters, a width of more than 200 meters, and a height of more than 10 meters. However, what made the host a little surprised was that the banquet in the palace was not the Western-style banquet that he had imagined. The kind of Western-style banquet with a variety of free-tasting dishes on the long table was a rather retro classical Chinese banquet. Small tables that were no more than 40 centimeters high were placed on the ground, and there was a futon placed on the ground behind them. Obviously, it was for the guests to sit cross-legged on the futon like the ancients and eat at the small table in front of them. The host noticed that many guests in the hall had begun to try to sit down in the way of the ancients. Unfortunately, after all, they were modern people who were used to sitting on chairs. After a while, they felt that their legs were numb and sore. They were not used to it. Fortunately, this method made everyone feel very fresh, so there was no dissatisfaction. My dear audience members, looking at the scene in front of us, it feels like we have returned to the world 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. It's really interesting. The host couldn't help but exclaim. Although she also wanted to sit on the futon and experience the taste of the ancients attending the banquet, it was a pity that as a reporter, she didn't have the leisure to sit down and eat. Instead, she constantly shuttled through the crowd and interviewed various big shots. However, what made the host feel a little strange was that at this time, the people in the hall were all ordinary people, or some sword-bearers of spirit sword rank and below. There was not a single sword-bearer of immortal sword rank. At the same time, in the most central position of the hall, there was a circle of furniture that was completely different from the other furniture. Everyone else had small tables, but in the middle of the hall, there were large tables that were 2 meters wide. At the same time, they were much taller than the small tables. They were not sitting on futons, but grand armchairs. It seems that these seats are prepared for the sword-bearers of immortal sword rank. The host immediately realized and said to the audience, "The city of London has come to congratulate the pirate sword immortal." Suddenly, a turtle with a white beard that was about to fall to the ground walked to the middle of the hall and spoke in a sharp voice that did not match his frail figure. Shortly after, a void gate opened beside the turtle Prime Minister, and the pirate sword immortal walked out of the void gate with an energetic look on his face. "Pirate sword immortal, please have a seat of honor." The turtle Prime Minister pointed to an armchair and said expressionlessly, "Oh, wait." The pirate sword immortal was about to sit on it when he suddenly turned around and carefully looked at the turtle Prime Minister. He touched his beard awkwardly and asked, "Have we met before? Why do I feel that you look a little familiar? I didn't expect the pirate sword immortal to remember me." The turtle Prime Minister's eyebrows twitched, and then he turned around, revealing a deep sword mark on his turtle shell. "Have you forgotten the massacre that the pirate sword immortal carried out on our mermaid island 20 years ago? If I hadn't escaped in time, I'm afraid I would have died under the sword of the pirate sword immortal." The pirate sword immortal's face was a little awkward. "You can't blame me for that. It was your mermaid Demonis who sang very seductively, but secretly wanted to suck me dry. No matter what, I had to fight back." The turtle Prime Minister was still angry and unhappy. "But turtle Prime Minister, there is one thing I don't understand. Since you are on Mermaid Island, why did you appear there? Oh yes, I seem to have seen your turtle head on the chest of a mermaid who could be your daughter. May I ask what that means?" "You, cough cough." The turtle Prime Minister coughed continuously, as if he had choked on seawater. "Ha ha." The pirate sword immortal laughed and sat on his seat. After the appearance of the sword immortal from London City, the other base cities' sword immortal level swordbearers also appeared one after another. The appearance of each sword immortal level swordbearer would lead to a heated discussion in the surrounding media. With so many sword immortal level swordbearers appearing at one occasion, apart from the General Assembly of the Sword Committee that was held once every 10 years, there was no other opportunity like this. At the same time, the various guests also discovered a pattern. That was, regardless of whether each base city had one sword immortal level swordbearer or multiple sword immortal level swordbearers, they seemed to only send one sword immortal level swordbearer to attend this coronation ceremony. As the host, Yuzhang City's sword immortal Ling Shu was the last sword immortal level swordbearer to appear. The sword immortal level swordbearers have all appeared. Next, it should be Long Shijiandi's turn. Whether it was the media or the rest of the guests, they instinctively thought that the next one to appear would be Long Shijiendi, and now all the sword immortal level swordbearers had appeared. However, even if Long Shijiendi was included, there were still many empty chairs in the middle of the hall. It seemed that in addition to Long Shijiendi, there were other important guests who were going to appear. It was just that everyone really couldn't figure out what kind of big shot had not come. Then, they heard Turtle Prime Minister shout loudly, "Eternal level freelancer Lord Li Bai has come to congratulate us." What? Li Bai? Who is this person? Yes. And an eternal level freelancer. Could it be that Sea Emperor is also related to the Freedom Cities? Whether it was the guests below the stage or the sword immortal level swordbearers on the stage, they were all stunned. They had never thought that a freelancer would actually come to participate in the Sea Emperor's coronation ceremony. There was no need for others to say anything. All the cameras of the media present were pointed at the center of the hall at the same time. A void door opened, and the handsome and elegant Li Bai, dressed in white, walked out of the void door. After saluting the surrounding sword immortal level swordbearers, he sat down in a VIP seat. Next should be Long Shijiendi, the guests thought one after another. Unfortunately, it was still not Long Shijiendi's turn. Eternal level freelancer Misaka Mikoto has come to congratulate us. Eternal level freelancer Yang Jian has come to congratulate us. Eternal level freelancers Anubis, Isais, and Bastet have come to congratulate us. Under the dumbfounded gaze of the surrounding guests, Yuan Ku's freelancers appeared in front of the many guests. These opponents who used to fight each other to the death in the past were actually living harmoniously in the same room at this moment. Chapter 1253. Guhan is getting more and more ostentatious. Misaka Mikoto's face was filled with joy when she saw the magnificent decorations in the hall as she walked out of the gate of the void. She didn't expect that the young man she got to know by chance would become the famous Sea Emperor. When Misaka Mikoto received Guhan's invitation to the Freedom City a few days ago, she did not believe it at all. She thought someone was messing with her. It was only when the mayor of the Freedom City personally confirmed the matter with Misaka Mikoto that she believed that the human who saved her back then had become the Sea King. Miss Mikoto. During the Battle of Yuzhang City a month ago, Misaka Mikoto had come to the rescue. Hence, Sword Immortal Ling Shu and Misaka Mikoto knew each other. When Misaka Mikoto appeared, she took the initiative to greet him. The two of them greeted each other and started chatting. "What's wrong? Old man Ling Shu, aren't you going to welcome me?" In the end, Sword Immortal Ling Shu's actions caused the next person who appeared to be a little displeased. This immortal realm war god, Yang Jian, who was dressed in silver armor and had a crown on his head, walked out from the spatial gate with his head held high. The moment Yang Jian appeared, all the immortal sword rank swordsmen present tensed up. The sword ladies next to them gripped the hilts of their swords at the same time and looked at the celestial world war god cautiously. "What's going on? We're all here to congratulate you. Why are you all so nervous?" Yang Jian laughed dryly. His arrogance was greatly suppressed. There were a total of 8 immortal sword rank swordsmen here. If any two of them attacked together, Yang Jian would not be able to leave this place alive. This was extremely normal. Misaka Mikoto was known as a free person. However, Yang Jian was different. He was Yuan Ku, whose hands were stained with the blood of humans. He was also a general of the Heavenly Court. How could the surrounding immortal sword rank swordsmen be at ease with Yang Jian? "Don't worry, comrades. Master Yang Jian has reached an agreement with Yuzhang City to protect Yuzhang City selflessly for 3 years. Hence, Master Yang Jian can now be considered a friend of Yuzhang City. He's half a free man. Everyone, relax for now. Master Yang Jian would never do anything that would betray his friend. Sword Immortal Ling Shu hurriedly explained. The details of the battle in Yuzhang City a month ago had already spread to all the sword-bearers. These immortal sword-bearers were also very clear about it. They also knew about the bet between Yang Jian and Jiyu Shen Yuan. Thus, after Sword Immortal Ling Shu's explanation, the tense atmosphere eased a little. Yang Jian didn't dare to be arrogant anymore. After a few dry laughs, he sat in his seat. Oh my God! Is Guhan going to get rid of me after I've outlived my usefulness? Suddenly, 3 terrified voices came from the hall. The 3 Yuenko, who looked human but not human, saw that they were surrounded by 8 immortal tier sword bearers, and instantly screamed in fright, huddling together nervously. The last ones to appear were naturally the 3 Egyptian gods who hadn't appeared for a long time. Ever since Guhan entered the Shanhai Pass, these 3 comrades had been living a carefree life. Apart from strictly abiding by their agreement with Guhan, which was to promise not to harm any human unless their lives were in danger, their lives could be said to be quite comfortable. Moreover, after Guhan came out of the Shanhai Pass, due to various reasons, he didn't choose to summon the 3 Egyptian gods to his side. He still allowed them to live happily. This made the 3 Egyptian gods, who had suffered for hundreds of years, extremely happy. Without Guhan's restraint, their lives were unimaginably happy. After all, they were all U-stage Yuan Ku, and they were absolute powerhouses among the Yuan Ku. Moreover, they were Egyptian gods who had mastered enslavement techniques. Very quickly, they enslaved a large number of low-level Yuan Ku. They even found the ruins of the palaces they had built 800 years ago. They planned to rebuild their temples that had been damaged for 800 years. Thus, they captured Yuan Ku everywhere and enslaved them to work for them. They regained the feeling of being a god who was above tens of thousands of people. Unfortunately, this feeling of being a god didn't last long. The situation they were most unwilling to see finally happened. Guhan, who hadn't given any orders for more than 3 years, suddenly gave them an order. He gave them a void coordinate and asked them to directly return to Guhan's side through the void. In this regard, the 3 Egyptian gods were very hesitant. They had lived comfortably for 3 years. Now, they were asked to return to Guhan's side and become Guhan's thugs. Even if they were beaten to death, they wouldn't be willing to do so. The 3 Egyptian gods decided to play dumb and pretend that they hadn't heard Guhan's order. Or, they might as well cut off their relationship with Guhan and live their own happy lives. However, such thoughts were just thoughts. The 3 Egyptian gods clearly knew that as long as their divinity was controlled by Guhan, they were not real gods. Helplessly, they could only obediently come through the void gate according to the agreed time. In the end, seeing the scene in front of them and seeing the 8 immortal sword wielders, the 3 Egyptian gods were almost scared to death. They naturally thought that Guhan was very dissatisfied with their disobedience, so he secretly set up a plan to use the power of humans to kill them. They were so scared that they prepared to open the void gate again and escape from this terrifying place. You 3 idiots, find a place to stand. Don't move without my order. Don't worry, no one will hurt you. A thunderous voice sounded in the ears of the 3 Egyptian gods and all the guests present. In an instant, the entire venue was in an uproar. These guests didn't expect Guhan to call the 3 Egyptian gods idiots. Weren't the 3 Egyptian gods invited by Guhan? How could they call their guests idiots? Thinking about it carefully, Guhan's tone wasn't the tone he used to treat guests. Instead, it was like he was treating a servant. It was like he was scolding his own servant. He punished the 3 U-level Yuan Ku to stand, and he didn't even give them a seat. However, what happened next shocked all the guests even more. The 3 U-level Yuan Ku of Egypt actually acted like Guhan's servants. They had obedient expressions on their faces as they obediently walked to the side and stood there like servants. What's going on? Lord Sea King actually has the ability to order 3 U-level Yuan Ku to listen to him. The other guests instantly started discussing, and their words were filled with admiration for Guhan. The contempt in their hearts because of Guhan's rank instantly dissipated. Hey, isn't this the Bastet brothers? It seems like I haven't seen you for 800 years. The three Egyptian gods were actually old acquaintances of young Jen. He warmly greeted the three unlucky guys. "Brothers, how did you end up like this?" "Ah, it's a long story." What else could the three Egyptian gods say? They could only say it's a long story. "My three friends, are you Isis, Bastet, and Anubis who founded Yuzhong City with Lord Zetian. On the other side, Sword Immortal Ling Shu recalled the founding history of Yuzhong City. He immediately walked up to the three Egyptian gods and asked curiously, "That's right. It's us three unlucky guys." Bastet rolled his eyes at Sword Immortal Ling Shu. "If it wasn't for that woman Zetian screwing us over, we wouldn't have been humiliated like this today. Being ordered around by a famed sword rank sword wielder, wait, what, woman?" Sword Immortal Ling Shu was stunned. "You idiot, you must have lost your mind from anger. What nonsense are you spouting?" Isis slapped Bastet's head and hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. "He's lost his mind from anger. Of course Zetian is a man. How could he be a woman?" "Oh." Sword Immortal Ling Shu nodded. He thought for a moment and said, "I shouldn't have said so much, but since the three of you were once Lord Zetian's subordinates and contributed greatly to the founding of Yuzhong City, I'll say one more thing." "Then let me say one more thing. Right now, Sea Emperor is no longer a famous sword-level swordsman. Right now, His Majesty is a spiritual sword-level swordsman. Oh, with Guhan's abilities, it's not a big deal for him to rise to spirit sword rank." "Wait. What did you say? What Sea Emperor?" The three Egyptian gods were all dumbfounded, and Sword Immortal Ling Shu was also dumbfounded. These three guys had come here without even knowing what was going on. With no other choice, Sword Immortal Ling Shu could only play the role of a commentator and tell them about Guhan's recent events. The three Egyptian gods were dumbfounded. They had been thinking of ways to repair their temples and were indifferent to the humans and Yuan Ku. They had never thought that Guhan was already so awesome that he had become the Sea Emperor. Especially when the three Egyptian gods heard that Guhan had cooperated with an Emperor sword rank sword wielder to kill 3 flood rank Yuan Ku, they were so scared that their necks shrank. "Welcome, Long Zetian," Prime Minister Turtle screamed. After the three Egyptian gods, it was finally Long Zetian's turn to appear. As Prime Minister Turtle's voice fell, another void gate opened in the middle of the venue, and Long Zetian, dressed in a crimson dragon robe, walked out of the void gate. In addition to Long Zetian himself, there were 36 women dressed in extremely complicated court dresses behind him. These women were holding a set of special ostentation for an emperor, such as liquor, books, flags, banners, and so on. It could be said that they were extremely mighty, fully demonstrating the majesty of an emperor. What does His Majesty Long Zetian mean? Who brings a whole set of liquor books to participate in someone else's coronation ceremony? When the audience saw the frightening items on the dragon lion sword emperor's back, they couldn't help but start discussing among themselves. At the same time, countless speculations about the discord between Long Zetian and Guhan began to circulate among the crowd. "Brother Guhan, you have just ascended the throne, and I have nothing to congratulate you with, so I will give you a whole set of liquor books that I have just made this year." Long Zetian laughed as soon as he appeared. It turned out that this set of things was a gift for Guhan. "Thank you for your kindness, Your Majesty Long Zetian. I will accept these gifts." Guhan's voice came from behind, and a few minutes later, Guhan, dressed in ordinary clothes, appeared in the venue. The protagonist of today's coronation ceremony had finally appeared. Chapter 1254. Along with Guhan, there were also hundreds of gorgeously dressed dragon ladies. They took over the whole set of chariot books from the hands of the ladies brought by Long Zetian. Guhan and Long Zetian stood together and chatted with a smile. No one could hear what they were talking about. It seemed that the guests and the host were having a great time. Finally, Long Zetian sat on the dragon throne specially prepared for him. Guhan still gave Long Zetian face. The dragon throne given to Long Zetian was not as honorable as Guhan's dragon throne, but the size and configuration were the same as Guhan's dragon throne. Long Zetian sitting on such a dragon throne could be regarded as receiving great respect from Guhan. The Sea Emperor's enthronement ceremony begins. With the arrival of the last guest, Longsha Jendi, Prime Minister Turtle finally shouted the words that everyone had been waiting for a long time. Quick! Quick! Hearing that the Sea Emperor's enthronement ceremony was about to begin, the cameraman who occupied the best angle under the stage entered a state of full concentration, ready to record this exciting moment perfectly. The audience in front of the TV was holding their breath, ready to witness the birth of the first Sea Emperor. Brother Guhan, why don't you call your good brother when you are so proud of your life? A heroic voice sounded in the hall, and immediately a void door appeared in the middle of the hall, right in front of Guhan. Your Majesty, be careful. The face of Prime Minister Turtle, who had always been expressionless, instantly showed a panicked expression. From this, it could be seen that the void door that suddenly opened was not within Prime Minister Turtle's expectation. It was an uninvited void door. What a familiar voice. Hearing the voice coming from the void door, such a thought popped up in the minds of all the people present. Some of the guests who were responsive and had a strong memory quickly remembered who this voice belonged to. Friends in the audience! Friends in the audience! It's Qin Shi Huang, our ancestor. His Majesty Qin Shi Huang is here. The hosts said excitedly. Just as everyone had guessed, Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng, clad in a black dragon robe, soon walked out of the void gate and appeared in front of everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, His Majesty Longsha Jendi, His Majesty Qin Shi Huang, and His Majesty Sea Emperor, I never thought that these three supreme emperors would actually appear here at the same time. This is truly an exciting moment. This is truly the Three Emperors' Assembly. The host shouted excitedly. It had been many years since the three emperors had gathered in one place. I say, Brother Guhan, you're too unkind. You didn't even invite me for such a joyous occasion like ascending to the throne. Have you forgotten our friendship in the Shanhai Pass? Yingzheng, the first emperor of Qin, gave a loud laugh, spreading his arms and trying to embrace Guhan. I wouldn't dare. With a nimble turn, Ji Yuhan dodged Yingzheng's embrace, causing Yingzheng's embrace to miss its target. Yingzheng's complexion immediately changed, but soon returned to normal. With a faint smile, he said, It seems that we brothers have not seen each other for 2 or 3 years, and have become a little estranged. Please sit down. Guhan's face showed neither joy nor anger. He just lightly pointed to an empty seat not far away and said, Please sit down. This is not appropriate. Yingzheng glanced at the seat pointed out by Guhan, and his face showed a bit of anger. Because Guhan actually let him sit in the same position as an immortal sword-grade sword-bearer, unlike Longsha Jendi who specially prepared a more honorable position for him. What's not appropriate? Guhan said lightly, I didn't prepare a seat for an uninvited person. As soon as Guhan's voice fell, the whole venue fell into an awkward situation. All the guests present could feel that Yingzheng, the first emperor of Qin, who had been in the limelight recently, and Guhan did not seem to get along very well, or it could be said that the two almost directly fought in this venue. Strange, didn't I hear that Qin Shi Huang and Ocean Emperor were good friends in Shanhai Pass? They and Miss Ling supported each other, and finally defeated all the great wizards, achieving an unprecedented victory for mankind. Why do they not look like friends now, but like two enemies? A guest present whispered to the person next to him. How would we know about the affairs between these big shots? Just relax and watch the show. I thought that attending this ascension ceremony was just a formality, but now it seems that there will be a good show to watch tomorrow. Another guest said with narrowed eyes. Brother Guhan, what you said is wrong. How can you say that there are no good seats? I see that there is a good empty seat here. How about letting your brother sit here? Yingzheng pointed to the dragon chair behind Guhan and said. There were only 2 dragon chairs in the entire venue. One dragon chair was currently sitting on Longsha Jendi's buttocks, and the remaining dragon chair was naturally the dragon chair that Guhan had prepared for himself. Now, Yingzheng pointed to Guhan's own dragon chair and said that he wanted to sit and watch. Even a fool could see the meaning behind this. No matter if it was on the stage or off the stage, when Yingzheng said that, the entire place fell into a complete silence. The guests did not even dare to breathe too loudly, and all of them had their eyes fixed on Yingzheng and Ji Yuhan who stood right in the center of the venue. They never thought that Ying Zheng did not come to congratulate Guhan this time. On the contrary, Ying Zheng coveted Guhan's position as the Emperor of the Sea, and planned to snatch food from the dragon's mouth. Be it the ordinary guests, the immortal sword-bearers present, or the guests of Yuan Ku, all of them stared at Guhan, wanting to see how Guhan planned to respond to Ying Zheng's provocation. Misaka Mikoto, Li Bai, the three unlucky Egyptian gods, and sword immortal Ling Shu clenched their hands into fists or placed them on the hilt of their swords, looking ready to attack at any time. Other than them, the rest of the immortal sword-bearers and Long Shijendi remained motionless. The number of humans who were willing to help Guhan at any time was actually less than that of Yuan Ku. This was a very ironic thing. At this moment, everyone's gazes were focused on Ji Yuhan. If Ji Yuhan said anything wrong, it was very likely that this coronation ceremony would turn into an intense battlefield. Sure. Under everyone's gaze, Guhan's expression did not change. He slightly moved his body to one side, revealing the Emperor of the Sea's dragon chair behind him. If you want to sit, then sit. What? Guhan actually gave up his dragon chair. Guhan's reaction surprised all the guests. They thought that Guhan might politely refuse, or maybe he would just laugh it off, or maybe he would bring out another dragon chair for Ying Zheng. They never thought that on this occasion, Guhan would actually give up the dragon chair so easily. This time, the focus of all eyes had shifted to Ying Zheng. People began to eagerly want to know if this ancestor of mankind from thousands of years ago had the guts to sit on the throne. Ying Zheng hesitated for a moment, then took a step forward. This step also shocked all the guests present. Could it be that Ying Zheng was really planning to completely strip Guhan of his dignity and sit on Guhan's throne just like that? At this moment, people suddenly felt that a storm of blood was about to unfold in the future. Hee. It's just a joke. You and I are brothers, how can I disturb your ascension ceremony? Ying Zheng's face twitched a few times, then he bumped Guhan's shoulder with his own, with an expression that said I'm just joking with you. He then took a few steps back, turned around, and directly opened the void gate. With a taut face, he said, never mind, I don't have time to attend your ascension ceremony anyway. I'll just show my face and leave, you don't have to send me off. The development of the situation could be said to have made everyone feel the lack of intelligence. Even a fool could see that Ying Zheng's excuse of not having time and leaving after showing his face was extremely laughable. Even if he used the void gate, it would take 2 to 3 hours to travel from Yangjing City to the Ocean Emperor Palace. A round trip would take 5 to 6 hours. Since he had already spent 5 to 6 hours, why would he care about spending 1 or 2 more hours to attend the entire ascension ceremony? Yet, Ying Zheng had used this lame excuse just like that. In the eyes of the audience, it was not because Ying Zheng did not have time to leave, but rather, it was as if he had seen something extremely frightening and wanted to leave in fear. That was a close call. If I had taken one more step, I'm afraid my blood would have been spilled on the spot. Ying Zheng looked very calm on the surface, but deep in his heart, he felt like a raging storm. At the moment when he approached Guhan's dragon throne, Ying Zheng suddenly felt 2 extremely strong killing intents enveloping him. If he dared to take one more step forward, the 2 killing intents would tear him into pieces without any hesitation. This was not the first time Ying Zheng had experienced such a feeling. He could still clearly remember that when the man named Jing Ku came to him with the map of Yang Kingdom's supervisor Kang, he had the same feeling in his heart. At that time, Ying Zheng was just the weakest Grand Magus, while Jing Ku was a heaven immortal assassin meticulously cultivated by the Mount Shu sword sect. There was a huge gap between the overall strength of both of them. If not for the timely protection from the Grand Magi of Wu people, perhaps Ying Zheng would have been killed by Jing Ku. No, this feeling is 10 times stronger than Jing Ku's. I'm really going to die here. Ying Zheng's heart was still filled with fear, so much so that he did not even care about his basic face. He simply found a lame excuse and prepared to leave this place. Big brother Yao Guang, since you're already here, why don't you stay here for a while longer? Don't worry, with me here, no one will dare to do anything to you. Just when Ying Zheng was about to leave through the void gate, another void gate opened up right after him, and a figure that even until now Guhan had been dreaming about walked out from it. Chapter 1255. Miss Ling. It's Miss Ling. Miss Ling is finally here. I thought she wasn't coming. Seeing Liuyan Ling walk out of the void gate, the surrounding immortal sword wielders all stood up to welcome her. Their attitude was much more respectful than when Guhan had appeared. From this, one could see how much influence the Liuyan family had in the human world. It was not something that Guhan, who had suddenly appeared, could compare to. In fact, the human world's attitude towards Guhan was still a little vague. The appearance of the Ocean Emperor was a great thing, and everyone came to congratulate Guhan. However, deep down, they did not really approve of Guhan. It was because of Guhan's identity. Although Guhan could defeat the flood-level Yuan Ku and become an Emperor sword wielder, he might be able to crush everyone and start a new era. However, Ji Han was still a spirit sword-level sword wielder at the moment. Becoming an immortal sword level and an Emperor sword level was not something that could be achieved with just one's abilities. The key was to see if one could gain the recognition of an Emperor sword level sword mistress. Before Guhan could truly synchronize with an Emperor sword mistress, anything was possible. Perhaps in the future, Guhan would fade into the crowd. Of course, the most important thing was that these people were very jealous of Guhan. Why did the Ocean Emperor's good fortune fall into his hands? Why didn't it fall into their hand? Guhan was also aware of this situation. Other than feeling a little unhappy and sad, he did not have any other thoughts. Things like prestige and experience needed time to accumulate. In the future, these people would sooner or later grovel under his authority. Greetings, seniors. Liuyan Ling greeted the surrounding immortal sword wielders. Ling, no need to be so polite. These immortal sword wielders grabbed Liuyan Ling's hand, indicating that she did not need to be so polite. Who am I? Ling. Actually, just like these immortal sword wielders, Guhan was very excited about Liuyan Ling's appearance. After all, this was the first time Guhan had seen Liuyan Ling after more than 2 years. Most of the time, Guhan would silently think of Liuyan Ling. Although he would not shed tears for her, he could not help but feel sour in his heart. She was the only woman who could make Guhan feel this way other than the sword mistress and Artoria. Liuyan Ling greets Your Majesty. On behalf of the Liuyan family, Liuyan Ling congratulates Your Majesty. Compared to Guhan's excitement, Liuyan Ling's expression was much calmer. She gave Guhan a very standard greeting, took a few steps back, and turned to Ying Zheng. Brother Yaoguang, since you're here, don't be in a hurry to leave. Let's congratulate Your Majesty together. All right. Ying Zheng nodded. Although he did not know why Liuyan Ling was helping him this time, with Liuyan Ling's help, Ying Zheng would no longer be afraid of Guhan. Naturally, there was no need for him to be in a hurry to leave. In fact, Ying Zheng did not want to leave at all, because he desperately wanted to make a deal with Guhan. Ever since he left Shanhai Pass, Ying Zheng had been very popular in the human society with the title of being the human ancestor, the savior of mankind, and the third emperor sword wielder. More importantly, after Ying Zheng obtained the 11 drops of Zhu Wu's blood essence, he could not wait to become the real Zhu Wu through Zhu Wu's blood essence. Ying Zheng was indeed a genius of the Wu people. It only took him 2 years to fuse all 11 drops of Zhu Wu's blood essence into his body. His strength was more than 10 times stronger than when he was in Shanhai Pass, and he even absorbed the power of rules in Zhu Wu's blood essence. Ying Zheng was confident that even if he faced a flood-level Yuan Ku, he would still be able to put up a fight. That was why Ying Zheng had the confidence to find trouble with Guhan. However, no matter how hard Ying Zheng tried, he was always a little bit away from the last step. He could not advance to the level of the real Zhu Wu. At most, he could only advance to the limit of the Great Magus. Only then did Ying Zheng realize that all 12 drops of Zhu Wu's blood essence were indispensable. If he could not find the last Great Magus, Chang'e, and obtain the drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence guarded by Chang'e, Ying Zheng would never be able to become the real Zhu Wu. Because the world was peaceful at the moment, the defense in Shanhai Pass was not as tight as before, or rather, it was very lax. Therefore, Ying Zheng snuck into Shanhai Pass very easily. Using the mystic art of the Wu people, he searched the place for a while, and he really found the clue left behind by Chang'e. He learned that Chang'e had given the last drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence to Guhan. Or perhaps, this clue was left behind by Chang'e on purpose, because she knew that Yingzheng would find it sooner or later. Therefore, the fact that Chang'e gave the last drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence to Guhan became a very malicious act. When Yingzheng learned the truth of the matter, he did not think much of it. He felt that with his current strength, it would be a piece of cake to defeat Guhan. If Guhan knew what was good for him and took the initiative to give him the blood essence of Zhu Wu's blood essence, then that would be fine. But if he did not, Yingzheng did not mind using force to make Guhan yield. Unfortunately, Guhan was missing at that time, and Yingzheng had no idea where Guhan was. So, he could only drop the matter. To Yingzheng's great surprise, when he received the news of Guhan again, Guhan had already cooperated with Longsha Jendi to defeat 3 Hong-level Yuan coups, and had even become the Emperor of the Ocean, which was somewhat inexplicable. This made Yingzheng feel jealous and resentful. So, he planned to embarrass Guhan during Guhan's ascension ceremony, and even seize the position of the Emperor of the Ocean, using it to force Guhan to give him the last drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence. Originally, Yingzheng thought that his plan was foolproof. With his strength that was infinitely close to the strength of an Emperor sword-level sword wielder, he could easily defeat Guhan, the lucky guy. But Yingzheng never thought that before he could fight with Guhan, he would be scared off by the 2 hidden auras, and what was even more unexpected to Yingzheng was that Liuyan Ling, who was originally standing on the side of Guhan, was standing with him today, and even wanted to help him. Obviously, when they were in Shanhai Pass, Liuyan Ling also wanted to kill him. But Liuyan Ling's tone did not sound like she was pretending. Instead, there was a bit of sincerity in it, which made Yingzheng finally decide to stay and see what was really going on. Anyway, Yingzheng felt that even if he could not defeat her, he could still run away. "Brother Yaoguang, take a seat." Liuyan Ling found a seat and sat down, then pointed to the seat next to her and said to Yingzheng. Yingzheng smiled and sat down obediently. This seat was originally prepared for the immortal sword-level sword wielder. Yingzheng was unwilling to sit on it previously, as he felt that it would be embarrassing. But now that Liuyan Ling invited him to sit, Yingzheng went with the flow and sat on Liuyan Ling's words. Seeing Yingzheng and Liuyan Ling sit at the same time, the guests present were a little disappointed, but at the same time, they were relieved. They were disappointed because the guests present thought that they would be able to see an exciting battle, but they were relieved because the conflict between humans had been suppressed in the end. No one present had shed all pretenses of cordiality, so the coronation ceremony could continue. Prime Minister Turtle, continue with the next ceremony, Guhan said to Prime Minister Turtle. Prime Minister Turtle nodded and shouted, "The ascension ceremony will now begin, Your Majesty Emperor of the Sea, please take your seat." The so-called take your seat actually meant to be seated. The Emperor of the Sea's dragon throne behind Guhan immediately bloomed with a magnificent light, as if it was welcoming its owner. And Guhan did not stand on ceremony and sat on the Emperor of the Sea's dragon throne. Clap 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 clap. Suddenly, there was a lonely applause in the hall. Everyone saw Li Bai, Misaka Mikoto, and the other Yuan Ku's area suddenly applauding in unison. On the other hand, the humans themselves did not react for a while. Clap clap clap. Fortunately, Longsha Jendi reacted quickly. Less than a second after Yuan Ku's applause sounded, he also began to applaud. Longsha Jendi's applause also inspired the other guests present. There was a thunderous applause in the hall. Even if some people were reluctant, for the common interests of humans, they had to start applauding and cheering for Guhan's seat. Otherwise, they would become a laughingstock in front of the Yuan Kus. Sooner or later, I will make all of you applaud me with all your heart. Guhan sighed helplessly in his heart when he saw that the audience's hearts were divided. At the same time, he said to himself. Guhan believed that it would not be long before all humans would applaud him sincerely. Next, let's invite Your Majesty Emperor of the Sea to give a speech. Prime Minister Turtle said. The guests below the stage also learned to be obedient and began to applaud in cooperation. Dear guests and distinguished guests, welcome to my ascension ceremony. During the ascension ceremony, Guhan naturally had to give a speech. However, As soon as Guhan opened his mouth, his words were a bit harsh. I know that many of you here do not think that I am qualified to sit in this seat. After saying this, Guhan glanced at all the guests below the stage. Those ordinary people naturally lowered their heads in fear, but many of the sword-bearers raised their heads high and looked directly into Guhan's eyes, especially those sword-bearers of immortal sword rank. Except for Sword Immortal Ling Shu and Sword Immortal Pirate, the rest of the sword-bearers of immortal sword rank had a somewhat different look in their eyes. I also know that in the eyes of all of you, my position as Sea Emperor really came out of nowhere. It is as if it fell from the sky and smashed me on the head. Gu Han sneered. However, I would also like to ask everyone to think about it. If the Sea Emperor's throne were to fall from the sky, who would be able to catch it at the first moment and not be crushed to death by this throne? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.